Oh, that sounded great. Hey, Internet, and you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to start the sound recording. Oh, I thought I had it all ready so I could almost make sense right away. I need another program. I got to start another program. I don't even know if I downloaded that one yet, so you're going to hear some typing. Doesn't look like it, especially because I'm typing wrong. So we will go and start downloading that while we chat this morning about what's up. Yeah, so last you heard, I was like without a computer, right? No longer the case, but it's not the old computer. It's a new computer, which means that because I did not use backup the way I'm supposed to, and I guess I've learned my lesson now, although part of me is like glad that I didn't in a weird way, but that's a different thing. Um, Hold on, Mojave Sierra. I guess Mojave must be the one I'm supposed to use. They don't have one for Catalina. Uh, Sorry. Um, I gotta get this sound program going. And I really wanted to do this before I was on with you. I apologize. So now I am not even saying what I was saying before. We'll be there in a moment. This shouldn't take too long. Drag and drop you to right there. And in theory, I should hear a thonk in a moment. There, well, there it is. We're going to open it. Close that. Open it. It wants my microphone. That's okay. So let's go to the preferences on that very deal. Make sure we get the right microphone going on all of this. Come on. Oh, don't crash on me. So it's a new computer, which means, rebuilding life from the ground up. Well, of course, it's going to freeze now. Great. Rebuilding the whole thing from the ground up in terms of process and what you do and like trying to remember and programs and movements and thinking that oh, interesting, Joseph. I'm not used to it. Did you see this pop up? Oh my goodness. I thought I was ready. There's a pop-up. So Ecamm, I re-downloaded Ecamm. It's here. It's the program I'm used to, but now it's doing things I'm not used to it doing. So it's saying on this screen that there's a comment, but there's a comment over there. That just got to be for me, I guess. I'll click it away. Trying to remember what I was using and when. Like, what your big apps are. It's like, okay, I got to get Chrome, even though I don't like Chrome. And I tried Opera, and I tried Firefox to be a little less, and Brave to be a little less, followed by Google, but not everything works. So got to get Chrome, and, those things. But maybe you don't, but I have like these little corner apps that I'm kind of tying together with shoestrings to make things happen. I guess more efficiently, I guess is it, but just with less mental strain. But now it's the mental strain of trying to remember what these things were and where they went, what happened to them. Do I still own them? Can I use the license one more time or not? So all of that combined with trying to capture generalized project management information, some of which was in a program that I can access, some of which was not, some of which was in my head, I suppose. Anyhow, it's been fun, but not, right? Because it's also been my vacation time. And so, working 12 hours on a computer every day of your vacation is not necessarily what most people would consider fun. But if I don't do that, then Monday's going to come, and Monday things got to start running because nothing's really ready for the following Sunday. Like I had Christmas, we're through it, but now we're going to be on the ground having to start over, and I need the process there to work. Anyhow, so it's there, it's coming, and I'm talking to you on the internet with the program I'm used to talking to you with. I feel like the video looks good. I kind of know what I'm doing, but I got to get the sound program going because we are going to be doing some double duty this morning again, at least one more week of this. I'm going to test this real quick here. I got the recording. Play. Okay, that sounds all right. It's a little loud, but it'll do, I think. If we just touch this down like that, that might do it. I can turn mine up. If I just got quieter on your computer, then you might want to turn me up a bit there. Undo record. So, and I do have some fun stuff this morning, I think, assuming we can get past unexpected things like forgetting to get the sound program on your computer and having your door be missing a pin so that it won't shut. What? Did I do that like months ago and just thought, oh, it'll work with 2 pins? Because now it won't shut and the other pins are probably bent because it's hanging off the one and I can't get it. Like that just happened. Like I'm like gonna click go live. I try to shut the door and there's a pin missing. I know life is full of thorns and thistles. I get it. Okay, God, I get it. I believe what you've said. It's so incredible how I cannot get like my head above the water on this thing. It really is something. On the flip side of this, which is pretty fun, we have officially started onboarding some team members for the super secret project of what's the right word to say it? Getting the word out. Yeah, that what I want to do most is have you hear the good word, the benediction, right? The benediction, the good word, the permanent and powerful and true words about Jesus. I believe that as Lutherans, we have this so succinctly and clearly confessed and understood in our tradition, in our history, in the way that the faithful before us have spoken. And we're kind of not saying it loud enough. And so I want to say it loud. I want to say it loud. I want to get heard. And you know this if you've been following along. You know that I think some of this is because we're trying to make people learn our language before they listen to us, right? It's like rather than go into the new world, where they're speaking, Swahili or whatever, and learn Swahili, we're like, no, you learn my language and then you'll understand. Well, maybe we should learn their language first, and then that's the pathway to our language. There's also the side of, language decays, and so at what point do the words stop meaning the words? There was something that really just hit me this week with that, actually. There was a term, what was it? It was somewhere in the Bible, is a Bible phrase or term, and we always translate it a certain way, and I was just like, at this point, that word doesn't even mean what it means anymore. This was not it, but this kind of connects. There is a book I just finished reading. I guess it's the fourth in a series. I didn't realize that. It's called Skin in the Game. When the newsletter comes out, hopefully on Monday, it will have a link to this book. I don't know that I recommend going and reading it. It's a bit technical in the author's own language, but it's phenomenally stimulating if you can be challenged by somebody who's just snarky and arrogant, but also challenges a lot of other people that you're going to be like, I'm glad he's challenging those people. But then he'll like throw some stuff at you. You're like, wait, how do I reckon with this as a Christian? Particularly his views on Christianity. He says he's Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. Yeah, culturally, he definitely is. He was talking about, now I got to get back to the word, the meaning of the word. What was it now? I can't get it. It was just last night. It was the end of the book. And the meaning of this word that we've taken in a certain direction, it wasn't wisdom. But now I can't think of it, though. It was a word that's in the Bible. We translate it all the time in the Bible. And it wasn't religion either. But he was talking about how the original word, and this guy studies ancient languages, is like a combo of self-control and temperance and patience. Like that's all that word means, all it ever means, and it means all of that. And I'm pretty confident that when we come over it in English as a word, that's not what we think. It wasn't the word religion, but it was like that. It was like the word religion. It was not that word. Maybe it was. Maybe it was religio, right? Religio. He's looking at the Latin. It's not the Greek. I can't remember which one. But it was, because he combined it. And so the opposite of religio, right? So people say I'm not religious, right? The opposite of religio in Latin is superstitio, right? I may be getting the Latin completely wrong, but the opposite term in the original meaning is superstitious. So either you're religious or you're superstitious. Like you don't get to say I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. That means superstitious if you're a Roman, right? Now we're in a different world. It's not a totality transfer. It's actually a hermeneutical error, the illegitimate totality transfer. So it's not that, but at the same time, it's pretty illuminating. And that this word religio didn't mean like legalistic, right? We talked about this last week. It means instead having self-control and patience and temperance with regard to your actions based on what you believe. I'm not religious. I have no self-control or temperance or patience based on what I believe. Instead, I'm superstitious. Are you sure you want that one? Yeah? Are you sure you want that one? So language. Sometimes the words just don't mean what they mean. And so, well, are we going to change the word religion now? No, we're not. No, we're not going to go out there and fix the word religion in the culture. It's not going to happen because that is a matter of the decay of language, which is the fall of Babel or the Tower of Babel. Curse still here. It's always going to happen. So, yes, we want to be able to speak what people are speaking now with the words as they are meant in Scripture to them. And the ideal would be that they would then learn the language of the Scriptures, but that doesn't mean that the first way that we translated it back in when King James did it, is the best way to translate it now. Anyhow, that's not the word I want to get out, right? That's not the main idea. Like as Lutherans, like we got to wrestle with this one a little bit because we don't like it for some reason. We're like, no, I want to hold on to my heritage. And I get it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to insult your heritage. I like my heritage too. And we've been so attacked with regard to our liturgy. I mean, it's just stunning to me how regularly. I mean, you may even, if this is the first time you've heard me talking about this, you're like, he's talking about the liturgy. No, I'm not. I'm not even close to talking about the liturgy. Not even close. So we've been under assault by revivalism. So I get it. So we've gone into entrenchment mode to defend ourselves. Cool. Like I'm with you. I'm on that train. Yeah. But like from the train, I think we need to make some assaults, right? We actually need to go out as well, right? And not, we don't have to do it the way the revivalists do it. We don't have to listen to them. There was another big piece in this book. Man, I got to read this book. I listened to it. It's the first book I've listened to on Audible that I was like, I need to read this. It was too dense. It was too, and good. Like he'd say things like, oh, wow. What did that mean? I had to go back and listen again. I need to read this. Anyhow, it's yet another book that's ultimately about business. It's an economics book, right? It's in, Black Swan. It's not Unbreakable. The third book has something to do with not being fragility. I can't remember it. And then Fooled by Randomness is the first one. And again, this is Skin in the Game. An economics book, yet another book from the secular world that if you are carefully attentive to the rules of wisdom that the secular world can see, basically says, don't jettison your history. Don't jettison your ritual. The ritual is of far more value than you can possibly realize at this moment. So don't get rid of it. If it's been there a long time and you think it doesn't make sense, that's the best reason to keep doing it because it's there to protect the community. These kinds of things, and he does this whole thing, that whole point of view is done on like even economic probabilities and math out of studying, markets and, what's the word? It's not probabilities. Whatever that school is, statistics. I mean, this guy's, and he's not one of these guys who's like, I'm just going to throw statistics. He's like, no one understands statistics. They use it wrong. So if you're like, if that's where you are, yeah, he's saying that. And then he's showing, how foolish we are as modernists to let this like late 15th century rationalist made up idea about reason completely ransack everything that we do and tear down the structures of civilization in the name of wisdom. Oh man, it's a fascinating book. It's not as clear as it probably should be. It's a fascinating book. I got to read it. I want to go back and listen to the first ones too, as well. Anyhow, so this all came out of, like, the point is, right? Come visit my church. We got more liturgy than you probably got at yours. Okay, I don't do incense, and if you go to Redeemer Fort Wayne, you're right, you got more. But by and large, we're probably up higher than I would say 90% of LCMS churches, and we're not going back. So that's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about learning to speak the language that the culture speaks. Actually, English. I'm not talking about heart language. I'm talking about English. With our truth, with our theology, and getting it out there. And we are now finally, like, because of me, beginning to have those of you who have said, I want to be part of this in more ways than just Patreon support, which is like awesome, right? You're part of it then too. But I want to have my hands on this, a small way, a medium way, a major medium way, as crowdsource components, right? And teamwork. We're just beginning to lay the groundwork for doing that. And that's exciting to me. It's like how do I describe this? I'm going to take a sip of coffee first. That's how. When I was, not considering the call to come to Rockford because they had not called me yet. And I was working for KFUO. I knew I wanted a call. I knew I didn't want to be in an office building in the next decade. I knew that pretty quick, actually. And there's more to this, but what matters is I didn't necessarily want to go to Rockford. I didn't want to go to Illinois ever. And I was asked to come and preach. I came and preached. I kind of liked it. I was asked to come again. Every step of the way toward being here and even up to this moment right now, with all the catastrophe of the tech and the fall and all this other stuff, it's been interesting here this last year. Every step of the way, there's been like this inkling, which is like, oh, that could happen. That could work. I think I said it to my head elder, Mawurlery, who, if you don't know Mawurlery, he's a good guy. But the first time I met him, like that first Sunday, I was sitting there and I was like, man, you got a lot of potential as a congregation. Like after that Sunday, there's a lot of potential here. I can really see how this could be really good. You got to get the right guy here. And I wasn't thinking of myself at that moment. But every step of the way, though, like it was never like I can see where this could be, but I see every step. It was never like that at all. Instead, it was I could see where this could be, and then I can see right now I could do that, and that'd be good, and maybe I'd get there someday. That'd be interesting. And I'm not a mystic. I wrote a book against mysticism. It's called Broken. Oh, other side. It's called Broken. You should read it. I'm not advocating mysticism. Life does not always work this way. Much of my life has not worked this way, but it won't stop right now. And so it's kind of weird. So I take that step, and then like there's another step, and it's going the same direction. It's like, well, I guess I got to take that one too. I don't know. But like that's not how I want to plan anything. I really want to be in control all the way, right? Like I totally want my plan to have no risk, which by the way, this book is about how if you don't have risk, you die, which is interesting too. This is the skin in the game. And he's talking economically, he's talking philosophically, everything, which is again, a fascinating proposition. Skin in the game is risk, right? And risk is necessary for value. That's mainly the thesis of the book. Anyhow, so I don't like that. I would rather have no risk and no skin in the game and have everything just be smooth and easy. I want to live in paradise rather than here on earth. And so anyhow, I've been in this school that the Lord has been forcing me, at least in the way my brain works, to not be in charge. And every step of the way, there's like this next step, right? And so one of the things I've been doing here recently is praying. I mean, I pray anyway, but I'm probably about as good as you are, right? How good are you? And I have a variety of ways of trying to remember the prayers I really want to pray for, like not just the random, like, oh, oh Lord, help me with this thing right now, or oh, they're sick over there and they need help. I mean, those are important too, but trying to let my prayers be formed by the Lord's Prayer a little bit more, trying to let them be formed by my vocation and office as a pastor a little bit more. And one of the prayers I've been praying regularly is for soldiers. And by that, I mean, Christians who are hungry to do something. And I'm not talking about sanctimonious blah, right? I'm not talking about looking down your noses at other people. I'm talking about those who are fearlessly committed to the value of the Word of God and just want to carry it, right? Want to speak it. And I've been praying that prayer for here, for Rockford, and it's happening. There's some there were already a good pile here, although they felt pretty run down. So we're working hard to get them to know like you're stronger than you think you are. But what's been fascinating is then suddenly this next step, this pie. I didn't finish my analogy. So each of these steps that I took that eventually ended up with, oh wait, I'm getting called to Rockford. Oh wait, I'm moving to Rockford. Right? How did I get here? It was all these little tiny steps that were like little golden balloons. Like, oh, that's the same color. I'll grab that one. Look, and then next thing you know, you got a whole pile of these golden balloons. Right? That I didn't plan that. That's kind of cool. There it is. So like that's starting to happen now for our little squad. And I don't know. I'm super nervous about it all falling apart because I've tried crowdsourcing before, and it doesn't always work really well. Sometimes it works really bad, and has a very, very short half-life. Like people jump on and then they fall off really quick. And so it's like, well, how do we not waste a bunch of time spinning our wheels? all this is to say, it doesn't feel like that's what's happening right now, and that's kind of exciting as from like a leadership management perspective, as somebody who has a bunch of ideas and a bunch of words that are the words of Scripture that I want to just shout to the world, but I can't do it by myself. I only got two hands and one head. That the path is getting laid for giving those of you who want to an opportunity to join in that action, and that's an exciting thing. That in this last week with the computers, all this other stuff, that was something that actually was able to begin in embryo happening. And I kind of got to leave it at that for now. If you're like, well, how do I get involved? How do I volunteer? Cool. Right now, we don't have a better way to have you let us know that you would like to do that than for you to send me an email via the contact page at revfist.com. I'm going to ask you not to do that just yet, because that would actually sideline me in trying to keep track of those emails from the next steps that will get us to where we have another person who would be like paying attention to that so that it wouldn't get lost, right? So we've got a nice little embryo package. There are good skill sets that are there. We got transcribers, we got strategic thinkers. I guess the one thing we don't have a ton of is like professional level artists who want to donate their time. We do have at least one very good artist who's working on the comic book with me, but I'm not going to ask him to do more than that at this point, especially since he's not been paid a dime for the comic book yet and won't be until it's released. And that's a whole other thing. So part of what we're going to do first, like the trajectory here, is we're going to get the newsletter back up. We're going to walk through the release of Without Flesh, which is in a month and a half. And from Without Flesh and that energy of Without Flesh release, we're going to start an Indiegogo campaign so that we can publish the comic book. And along the way, we're going to be attempting to remedy and fix the typos that are in the End of the World ebook and book series with Pastor Wolfmueller, and then have that continue, keep transcribing those. And from that, and with that, and alongside of that, and as much as we can kind of curve it all together, we're going to get that parenting series also into ebook and book form. Eventually, the Revelation series is a little bit of a different thing, but it's out there still. I gotta follow up on a different thread for that one. Stickers, t-shirts, they're kind of in there somewhere, right? When do they fit? That kind of thing. So to me, this is exciting. This is not about, it's not about popularity. It's about the good words, and the good words have to be spoken somewhere, and we need a hub, right? And there's enough of you that want this to be the hub, and that's awesome. It's awesome. So, anyhow, good morning. A couple questions, I guess I'll go, but we're going to get to something a little more planned here, believe it or not, barely planned. Ryan, how you doing? Ryan says, can pure doctrine survive without the historic liturgy supporting it? Well, that's a fascinating way to ask the question. I would say yes, it has to. It must, otherwise it wouldn't be pure doctrine. The liturgy, glorious as the historic reception of pure doctrine by more than one person, right? So the value of it particularly is that it is the communal response built over ages. Like we can't really, it would take us 2,000 years to do it again just as well, right? That reality is there, but that reality is not the actual delivered once for all testimony scriptures as God delivered it, right? That comes in the preaching and teaching of the apostles written down in Scripture. So yes, pure doctrine can survive without the historic liturgy supporting it. However, it would only survive with something an awful lot like the historic liturgy supporting it, right? Like there are certain things you're not going to get rid of. You're not going to have the backbone of the historic liturgy in hearing the Scriptures read, hearing the Scriptures taught, receiving the Lord's Supper, no, pure doctrine cannot survive without that, because that is the pure doctrine confessed in Scripture, taught in Scripture. Like you can't have it without that, because that is what it is. Yeah. But then when you get into other things, the seasons, for example, the way we've got the seasons laid out, which I would never change, but don't take this as advocacy for change. Although I think we could prune them a little better. And that's a different topic, but we could survive without that. Pure doctrine could survive without that. We'd come up with something else that would be like it, that would in some way teach the centrality of Jesus' life and the life of the church in exile and the return of Jesus at the end of the world. Like somehow we'd have something like that. But that's not. It's not. Of the. Oh, here we go. You want some? Okay. So I want words in English that are English words. But if you think that means I don't want to teach you the other words, you're nuts. I want to go harder. I want to go harder and deeper on the other words. I don't want to go back to the old English trick. I want to go to the Latin, man. I want to go to the, German, the Latin, and the Greek. So when the Germans were talking about this question, Ryan, and how the connection point is between something that's good and something that's necessary, they would talk about something that's of the bene esse and something that's of the esse. Latin again, esse. You can hear our word essence. Is the liturgy as we have it, verbatim, essential to Christianity? Or is it bene esse, benediction, good word, right? Bueno, Spanish, bene. Bene, good, for the good of esse, the essence. Is it for the good of the essential of the church? That's a valuable distinction. Because when it is for the good of the essential things of the church, it is not essential. And so that's when we can make it an idol. If we're not careful. When you start calling the good of the essential, now you're a Pharisee. Like literally, that's exactly how it happened. Oh, that's the law? Well, let's make some more laws to make sure we never have to think about that law in a spiritual sense, right? Let's just make these other laws so we know we're fine as long as we don't do the other stuff, right? So that's where this question is a little dangerous. But that doesn't mean that the wise course of action is therefore to try. Well, since I can have the church survive without the historic liturgy, I should. Like that is not a reasonable move, right? There is no logic in that decision. Since I could survive falling off a building from 3 stories, get up and walk away, I should give it a chance. Let's try it out, right? Like that doesn't. There's no reason in this. There's no logic in this. Which, interestingly, again, in Skin of the Game, this book is just really racking my head. He talks quite a bit about our definition of reason. Maybe it wasn't religion. Maybe it was ratio. And superstitio. Oh, yeah, that is what it is. I was totally wrong earlier. Oh, man. I hate it when I do that. Ratio. That's what happens when you talk about something you just read yesterday. Listened to yesterday. Ratio, not religio. Same issue, though, right? Same issue. The opposite of ratio. And ratio means patience and self-control, right? Not like no God. Anyhow. All right. So you're all chatting over there again, and I was going to do at least 2 before I got into some other stuff. Don't worry about being late, Dave. I was late too. Alfredo, what's up, man? It wouldn't survive. All churches have a liturgy. Well, that's an interesting way to look at it, whether they're aware of it or not. All liturgies communicate something. So yes. So you're defining the word liturgy a little differently here, then, right? Because he said historic liturgy. He meant a particular. That's an insular term for a particular order that's very, very tightly managed, right? And what you're dealing with here is more the wider understanding of liturgy, that there will be ritual, there will be habit, there will be things we do. And so you have to have something which continues from the apostles till now that's essential, right? And then you also will create either bene esse, or I don't know what the Latin would be, malesse, against the essential liturgies. And so we would actually maintain that many of the liturgies you find in, say, revivalist churches, a liturgy like super strong praise song, kind of cool praise song, the best praise song, really slow praise song, sermon, lots of prayers with music, another praise song, like that's a liturgy. And it it's not for the good of the scriptures being read, the scriptures being taught, the supper being received. Like it doesn't help that. It distracts from that at the end of the day, eventually. And it's proven itself. It was built on the basis of a disbelief in the essential nature of the Lord's Supper. I mean, the whole system is built on a disbelief that the Lord's Supper is essential to gathering as Christians. And that's based on the symbolic nature of the Lord's Supper. Speaking of which, I got a new book coming out, and it's about that. It's about that very thing. And one of the things I want to do this morning is give you a taste of that. And that was going to be second before, but because of your question and the way we've gone, we're going to go there first. But now I do need to turn some of this into the podcast for the week. I don't like doing this, but I got to do it again this week. Hopefully by next week, I will have flipped this computer scenario into a different, into hopefully by next week, I won't have to do this. Although I may need one more week of it, and then I think the week after that I can get enough interviews in the Fort Wayne to kind of push us ahead. So I'm gonna get the recording going, and we're gonna do at least an hour here of podcast style. I'll still try to look at the camera. I'm still going to be engaging you from time to time on the side, but I've got two things we're gonna do, and the first one we're gonna do is we're gonna be touchstoning on content of my new book, Without Flesh, and then from there we're gonna be touchstoning on. Can I get it up here? Can you see it? Oh, what's that? What is that? Is it really that? Did I actually open this and read some of it yesterday? Yeah, and it wasn't the part I planned to read, so that's interesting too. How I got sent off on a tangent. This is not the commentary I've been reading up to this point. When I stopped doing the Daniel stuff, it was largely because I'd got an email from a very faithful pastor who said, you know, the thing you said about that guy, Evil Marduk, it's wrong. And I was like, oh, why? And he said, well, it's like 200 years old as thought, and there's more archaeology. I'm like, yeah, that's probably true, given the commentaries written in the 1800s. So that's an issue. He's like, yeah, so you should probably read the commentary by Steinman from Concordia Publishing House. That one right there. And so, like, that was when Daniel went, don't go further. Because the only way forward is to actually go back and fix the one. It's not like it was like false doctrine error. It's more just a historical error, right? Erroneous history. And I want to fix that. I want to understand it myself, right? But now the tangent that it sent me on, this is really good so far, by the way, as a commentary. The tangent that it sent me on into that, it's got its own pieces, and we'll touch on some of that here too this morning, and share at least the initial pieces. So I didn't get nearly where I wanted to go, but we got the first edges of that. All right, so are you ready for this? So we are going to be podcasting here any moment. Let's do the coffee first. Good morning. How are you? Would you believe I could barely wake up this morning? Like I was doing my mindfulness, and then I laid down and like slept through the first 20 minutes of mindfulness and then did it again because I slept. Brutal. All right. I don't trust this to really record. We're going to hope. All right. Uh-oh. I got to go back. Sorry. I see you're arguing with me. All right. So at Joseph Kloss, I think that Rev Fiz's point at the beginning about speaking the language of culture to communicate. I want to know. Why am I wrong? Tell me. You're talking to Joseph. Joseph, where are you, Joseph? Yes, but... Oh, I saw you. Yes, but... Yes, but before people can learn the hard words, we must be able to communicate in language they understand. Yes. Oh, okay, so you're not arguing with me. All right, well, that's no fun. I thought you were going to debate me. Which is not really fun either, because everyone feels hurt when that happens, including me. But I was really curious what the point was. That makes for bad radio. That was such bad radio. At least you could, like, watch it on the screen. All right, you ready? We're going to go here. I don't know how I'm going to open this now. Oh, that's why I wanted to start with Daniel, by the way. So I got to tease. With Daniel to start it. Hold on. Yeah. We got to do that. Oh. And this is why I don't like doing this. By the way, doubling up like this is because the recording process when you're using a book and you have information you don't know but you're trying to put together and share, it requires too much looking down from the camera and requires starting and stopping, which we're not going to do today. And so it won't be as good as it could be. And that's part of what I'm talking about. Like, would you listen if it wasn't as good as it was, right? That's kind of the thing. The time it takes when you want to edit and all that. So, where do we begin? Well, here we go. Historical concerns about the date of the book of Daniel go all the way back to Porphyry, a virulent anti-Christian Neoplatonist philosopher of the late 3rd century, whose writings are no longer in existence, but is known only through the refutations of his arguments as they are contained in Jerome's commentary on Daniel. Porphyry challenged especially the visions in 7 through 12, believing them to have been written after the events supposedly happened. He conceded the visions were historically accurate, but he argued that Daniel was written as if it were a predictive prophecy, but it couldn't have been, because that's not what happens with the gods. He was actually written during the first half of the 2nd century BC, after the supposed events of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. The prophecies that attempted to prophesy events later into the reign of Antiochus were inaccurate, and therefore the book was unreliable. 3rd century Greek philosopher critiquing the book of Daniel. Now, what's so interesting about that is that most modern critics of Daniel are convinced they thought up that argument. They're convinced that they came to this conclusion through things like archaeology and the Enlightenment. And it's like, this is the beauty of knowing the fathers, right? Which I don't well enough. It's all been here before. Like this clever postmodern rationalistic atheistic stuff, it's not new. It's just got a different coat on, right? It's got a different, it doesn't say cinnamon on the package, but it's cinnamon on the inside. It smells the same, right? And so that's just stunning to me by itself. And that his argument was, it can't be actual prophecy, so it must be about this guy Antiochus Epiphanes that was happening later, right? This is during the Seleucid time in Judea, the Maccabees, all that stuff. It must be from there, but then therefore it's wrong because it doesn't line up the way it should, because the history says a different thing than what happened there. Well, that's convenient, don't you think? What a convenient argument, right? It can't be, a priori, it can't be what it says it is. It must be this other thing, but it's wrong about this other thing, so it's wrong, and we don't have to deal with it. It's just like there is no actual thought in that. Instead, it is just dismissal, and it's powerful. It's powerful when someone argues that way. So I find it fascinating that that's still the argument, is especially when the argument that it's based on or focused on that era is nonsensical itself from the archaeology we have now. And that's what we're going to do in the podcast here. One of two things we're going to do in the podcast here today, as we try to get back on our feet. The MacBook is still at the shop in parts. I haven't heard from the guy. There's another MacBook. It's sitting right there. You know what I don't know, and I should check? Oh no. I think it's okay. What I don't know is if the power that I've got hooked up into this one would actually work, because it's going through that. I gotta watch that. I would hate for everything to turn off in the middle of this. Anyway, it's sitting right there. It is not entirely set to go the way I need it to be set to go and everything, but it's enough that we could do this morning a little more better than we were. And the goal then today is to not be from the cuff. I got a lot of good responses from you via email, why you listen, what to do. It was very encouraging to me. The most discouraging was an encouraging one where he said, and I forget which one of you wrote this in, and it was like, I don't mind if you sometimes just talk randomly, but I would stop listening if you just sat down and talked and never did any study or thinking about it. And it's like that was like a two-edged sword for my head, because if I just sat down and talked, I'd be talking about what I was studying and thinking about. Like, it's not like there is no not studying and thinking about something in my weird life head, right? So something's there, and it's always going to be run through a theological lens. So I don't know that could happen, but then it struck that fear into my heart that I was talking about last week. But by and large, most of you are like, just keep discerning the world through the Christian eyes, and if you can do any Daniel or Revelation again, do it. And yay for this, right? Yay for this. And so out of this, I think I'm more confident. I don't know. Like I said, rejection issues. I'm more confident, but out of this, at the very least, when yesterday on Friday, which is not my vacation day, but my day off in my vacation week, that wasn't a vacation because it was hours and hours and hours trying to get a MacBook up and running again. Still not done. And why is this? It's because there's too much information in the world. That's why. As I was sitting there, or as I was leaving early in the morning to drive an hour away to do this just so I could get out of my own head and focus, I picked up my Daniel commentary. And with about 30 minutes left before I had to go meet my wife, and my battery at 5% and the plug way across the room, I opened it. And it felt good. It made me happy. It made me happy because I know I'm going to talk about it now. But the other thing I want to do today, along with it, is I got to do this. And the team that's being built for propagating, what do I say? How do I... there will be a name for this eventually, this team. It's there already, but shh. You don't talk about Fight Club. Shh. The first order of business that we have is to get the newsletter working again. Hopefully that'll be happening within a week. The second order of business is there's a new book that's coming out. I wrote another book. There's 3 books. How is this even possible? Like, I'm too young to have 3 books published by real publishers. These aren't self-published books, as if that's an argument for them being better. But it kind of, at least historically, is, right? To me, the reason this is exciting is I always wanted to be an author. Like, that was it. Like, as a young man, I was trying to write fiction when I was a kid, and it's kind of hard to believe that wait, there's 3. I wrote 3 books. They're out. They're going to be out there. They're really there. You can find them and pick them up. And I was thinking about this the other day with like my own kids. Like, I think my oldest maybe has tried to read one of them. Like, what's that like when your dad wrote books? My dad did not write books. So, like, I can't go back and look at my dad's work after he's dead and read his books, right? That's weird and cool. Like, I'm excited about that. I pray that it benefits my children. But I also know it's benefited a lot of people. I know that Broken hit a lot of lives. I know that Echo has sort of and should. It just hasn't had the push to get it out there, which is why I got to talk about Without Flesh and got to push it. We made so much noise when Broken came out. Granted, Worldview Everlasting was on a spike at that moment, so there was a lot of things congealing to make it go farther, but we made a lot of noise. So much noise that I had pastors in the LCMS, friends of mine even, reaching out to me and saying, stop promoting the book. This is nonsense. You're selfish. It looks bad. Like, I had people sending me emails saying that, right? And, which, I guess I get it. Like, I have the same, like, distaste with self-promotion. I really do. I don't like to talk about my own work. I don't show my own videos to my confirmands. Which kind of doesn't make sense if you think about it. But that's the way it is. Anyhow, he said, stop. The same guy, get this, the same guy, like 3 days after Broken came out, he had gotten it, he read it, he said, I was wrong. Promote it. So I need to promote Without Flesh. I need to promote Echo along with it, which is why I asked CPH if there were a way for me to give you, who watch this channel or listen to this podcast, a way to get both books together for cheaper than buying them separately and individually. And that is why if you go and you pre-order Without Flesh at cph.org and on checkout put RevFisk, REVFISK into the coupon code, you will get 20% off Echo when you buy Without Flesh on pre-order. Only for pre-order. That's a good deal. It's a good deal. So I highly encourage you to do that. But aside from it just being me saying, hey, go do it, what I want to do now is give you a little taste of some of what's in Without Flesh. There also will be, I'm not going to talk about where just yet, but shortly you will be able to read the first chapter online through CPH's stuff as well. So if you want to taste it before you buy, that's coming, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit of that right now as well. But I got to figure out where I was looking at it. It's right there. I don't want to lose this. We're going to throw this over here. All right. So, oh man, I'm not sure how to do is how to give you the taste without just reading the book. I'm not going to do that. So one thing I'm going to do, at least today, is share with you some of the structural layout. Like, I'm not going to let you see it just yet. Computer's too slow. Come on now. Come on now. So for each chapter in the book, there are 3 headings along with the title. And the first heading is always from Hermann Sasse, or Sasse if you are a Germanophobe. File, not phobe. The book itself would not exist without Hermann Sasse. The book, to some extent, is Hermann Sasse's essay. Oh, no, I lost the title. It says it in the start. I can't remember. It's his essay on the Lord's Supper from the middle of The Lonely Way, Volume 2 compilation. Lonely Way Volume 2 is a fairly thick book. It's great. Pick it up. Go read it. Costs you $40 or so, but it's worth it. It really is. But when I was reading that initially as a young man, young pastor, I think it was probably just my first or second year out from seminary, and we just had the mission that I had been sent on closed for lack of funding that was never there to begin with, and it's talk about a long, frustrating story. So I'm sitting on my porch on a Friday night without a call. I don't know what the future is at all, and I start reading, this volume 2 of Sasse. My buddy Tim Winterside said, you got to read some Sasse. And so I was working my way through it, and I get to this essay, and I just couldn't believe how essential this set of arguments was and is to the church. This set of discussion points on the centrality of the Lord's Supper to the life of Christianity. And I remember thinking immediately, like, everyone needs to read this essay. Every Christian in America needs to read this essay. I'm not probably going to get every Christian in America to buy Hermann Sasse's Lonely Way Volume 2 and then skip the first 150 pages to get to this essay. What do I do? And at that point, Without Flesh was born as an idea. Well, what I do is I'm going to translate it into American, right? And it's sat a long time. I wanted to do this book following Broken. And my editor, I think wisely said, let's wait, do something else first and do that one third. So, okay. And so now that's what happened. Okay, so long story short, though, the book is structured around the skeleton of Sasse's essay. It is not Sasse's essay, but it's structured around the skeleton, the idea, the arguments. And so every chapter is headed by a quote from Dr. Sasse. But that's not all. Every chapter is also headed by a quote from someone who you might consider a father of the church. Now, this can be anyone from Dr. Luther to Cyprian, right? And I think I even throw Calvin in there. No, it's Zwingli. I forget which one it is. It's either Calvin or Zwingli is thrown in there once. Just to show the discord between what Sasse says and what the next comment says. Because what I show you is Sasse says this, here a father says this, and it's awful darn close. And then, oh, by the way, here's a verse from Scripture that says this. Now, what I love this. I had to push a little to get this, but I love that they let me do this. So the verses from Scripture do not cite Scripture. Instead, they give you the name of the author. And I love it even more what it is on the first page, right? So is the introduction to the book. We have these 3 things: Sasse, a quote from Luther, and then a quote from Scripture, but it's anonymous. Did you know we have anonymous Scripture? We don't know who wrote it. You know this verse. I know you know this verse. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. It tickles my heart to see that on a piece of paper and then have the dash anonymous after it. Because it testifies to, even though the rest of these comments that are in these front of each chapter here are by real Christians, real confessors who had real struggling, tentatio-filled lives, as they were, as the Scriptures themselves are ratioed over the top of them and meditatioed inside of them, it's not about the man's name ever, unless that name is Jesus Christ. And I can actually quote Scripture, citing it with the individual, and make the point that what they say matters more than who they are, even though who they are does, in fact, matter. Because when a church father says something, we should listen, at least, before we disagree. And I think when Dr. Sasa says something, you really do well to listen as a modern Christian. So all right. So Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, forever. What does Sasa say? How does Sasa say that? I adore the way this guy writes. He says, what is wrong with our church? What is wrong with each one of us and our faith if such disintegration of our church was possible? Wow, that should hit hard. It does hit. It's hitting me right now. It hits hard. See, the way that we American Christians, and I include Lutherans in this right now, very much we are included in this. The way that we respond to and handle the collapse of our congregations that's going on around us has been doing at least 25, 30 years since I've been watching. And I don't know. I mean, I can't really firsthand go back and say that it was the seeds were there, but I don't know that it was actually happening. I don't know you could measure it that we can measure it now. The instinct is to look at it and say it's not our fault. We're doing everything right. Why is this happening? And Sasa just goes the other way, and I think he's so right. The first response should not be, oh, the church is dying, must not be my fault. The response should be, wait, the church is dying? What am I doing wrong? I must be doing something wrong. Now, I'm not talking about church growth. Don't get me wrong here. It's not just church growth. I'm talking about the faith of our children. And that's a different thing than church growth. Okay? So don't go off on that tangent. I'm with you. Church growth is not the answer. But if we have humans in the pew in one generation and they're listening, and we have humans in the pew in the next generation and they're kind of listening, and we have no humans in the next generation, it could be that we're just being faithful and the world is that strong, or there's something wrong. And that's what he asks. And he's asking this question at a time that is both worse and in some ways better than ours. They had more people going to church still, I think. But he's writing during the time of the Nazis. He's asking, how on earth did they get control of this thing? How did we let this happen? And pastors, if you're listening, I mean, this should hit you more than anybody else. If people aren't listening to your sermons, is it because they're not listening to your sermons, or is it because you suck as a preacher? And hey, look, we're all going to make mistakes. That's not the point. The point here is, where do you go first? Do you blame someone else? Or do you acknowledge that you probably need to repent? Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It doesn't change. So if the church needs to change or die, what happened? What already changed that made us sin? Because if we need to change or die, you know what we need to do? We don't need to change forward. We need to change back. That's actually the premise of the book. We do need to change back. Dr. Martin Luther's quote, sitting right between these two, between Sasa and the anonymous author of the Hebrews, is a little Latin for you. My Latin pronunciation is not great, but I like to butcher it and pretend like it sounds good anyway, so deal with it. Quid incertitudine im serious. Quid incertitudine in serious. What is more wretched than uncertainty? Oh, I love it. I love this page. There is a woodcut of an angel. And the angel is looking down upon the text. And in the angel's hands, he's male, as angels are, so far as Revelation is concerned. He has two chalices, two fine cups. And one of them, it looks like he's trying to catch something with it. But you can't really see what that is. The title of the chapter, the intro, is The Crisis of Crosslessness. First paragraph. Upheaval is all around us. A messy, dark age of misinformation, distraction and willfulness dominates us. Civilization trembles, besieged by gusts and surges. Impregnable institutions are collapsing while, by wit, will, and luck, power brokers ride the waves at a mad pace. In the midst of all this, for anything still trying to call itself a, quote, church, it is a terrifying time to be in business, much less to actively sail against the tide. But is any of it truly new? Or do we merely believe it to be so? To be sure, compared with our memories of those greener pastures only a few decades ago, pews are emptier, congregation budgets are dwindled, and church doors are closing. There's no question about that. It all looks authentically bleak. Yet what we must consider is what precisely the bleakness means. Have the times really changed? Is the church actually dying? Are we truly in danger of being subsumed beneath a new ominous culture of evil? Or is the only real difference a matter of our perspective? Is the only real change the fact that we have convinced ourselves that times have changed? That's all right, right? You could read that. That ain't bad. That ain't bad. Makes me want to do Audible. Hopefully we will. Reached out to them about that. They'd asked me to Audible Echo, and the way that it was set up, there was just no way to do it in terms of what was required from my end. And so I actually offered with this one. I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it this time. We got to do Echo and this at the same time. And they said, well, we're looking into it. So I don't know. I know some of you asked about about Audible books, audio books online, and it's just somewhere that CPH hasn't decided it's worth the investment yet. The only way you're going to get this to happen for any book from CPH is just to batter them with your, we will buy it, we want this, I'm not going to buy anything from you until you do this. That's the kind of thing that talks. And the buyer is who they are wanting to please. That's good business practice. So anyhow, that made me want to do it though. I feel like there's something there. So again, yeah, Elaine, I can't do Audible unless CPH does Audible. They own it. There's a contract. This is their work now. They own it. I get royalties when it sells, but not a lot, and they own it. So that'll be up to them. In fact, what I'm doing right now is maybe even not allowed, although they know I'm going to promote this. So I'm promoting this. That's what we're doing. Without Flesh, you can pre-order it on Amazon. That's fine. I get it. You can do that. Or you can go over to cph.org, and there you will be able to get 20% off of Echo when you pre-order Without Flesh. Just use the code REVFISK, REVFISK, on checkout, and you'll get that bonus there. So we'll do more of these kinds of tastes as we go, leading toward a launch in a month here, almost a month, just a little over a month. And I don't know. I don't like self-promotion, but this book ain't about me. It's just not. It doesn't talk about me much, if at all. This book is Herman Sass's essay, so that you can just absorb it. Like, ooh, yeah, like Inception, absorb it. So, with all that being there, and this still being a podcast, and it's still recording, and us only having taken 23 minutes, I have promised you a little Daniel. Now, I cannot promise this is going to be as good as it was. Certainly, we don't have the story set up here, because where I went on the deep dive was back into the narrows of why Daniel has always been a favorite whipping boy of liberal scholarship. Before they went to Daniel, 6-day creation and Jonah have always been those are the real ones they pull out when they feel like going nah, 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 nah at you. They pull those out. Daniel is more like on Friday night, this is what they're, toasting each other about how stupid Christians are over. Right? It's an elite, bourgeois, intellectualized favorite argument. Everyone knows that Daniel wasn't written during the exile. Everyone knows that Daniel might have been a historical person, but that this was written by some rebellious, Grecianized Jew during the rule of the Seleucids and Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Everyone knows. It's so obvious. Because there's these, and this is what we're digging into here now, that, there's these arguments that just can't be controverted. They can't be. Because modern scholarship has realized this. And what I love then about this thing from Steinman is like modern scholarship, my butt, you bunch of like rabbits, just echoing. Rabbit, is that the right word? Not rabbit. What's an animal? Mockingbirds? Yeah, kind of. Just a bunch of echoing yes men to this guy, Porphyry, who made this argument, way back in the 3rd century, that it had to be some Grecianized Jew during the Hellenistic reign, the Seleucids, all this stuff. And you're just parroting. There's the word, the bird. The bird's the word, all that kind of stuff. Ma, keen, bird, yeah. Now, is that an Easter egg with reference to a movie from the 90s that's funny? Or to something else that I don't know about, but was the Easter egg as it existed in the movie in the 90s? Makes me think of Samsonite. Oh, did you get it? Yeah, I hope so. Samsonite. I was way off. The way that they get to this, support this argument from the 3rd century, is by raising objections to various historical references in Daniel that they say don't fit. And I'm having to look here again at the text a little bit to remind myself. So we talked about this one. So, for example, in Daniel 1, verses 1 to 2, and if you want the deep argument, go back and get God is Judging, volume 1, the first episode on that. We did talk about this. They point out that Daniel does not talk about the reign of Nebuchadnezzar the same way that Jeremiah talks about the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, and therefore does not line up with what we also know historically about the reign of Nebuchadnezzar by like a year. Like he's off by a year. So obviously he doesn't know what he's talking about, and Revelation's impossible and there's no miracles. Well, I mean, this isn't their whole hat, but it's emblematic of their whole hat. It's emblematic of the arrogance that is used to read the Bible. And this is where, this isn't just about bashing, liberal scholarship here. This isn't just about bashing the lack of actual reason by reason-touting progressives. This really needs to be applied to us, to yourself here, and how you read the Bible, how careful you read the Bible. What do you assume when you read the Bible, especially when you're dealing with things like language? Because when you read, and I don't have the narrows here right in front of me, but when you read in Daniel 1 that it was in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim that Nebuchadnezzar conquered, and you read in Jeremiah that it was in the 4th year that he conquered, and you say, well, there's an error there. Before you've gotten to that statement, you have already placed yourself above the text, not as being above the Bible, but as being above historical documents, with the radically arrogant assumption that everybody counts the same way you do throughout all of history. And if you study ancient history carefully, you will see that that's just not the way it is. That they did not always count the way that we count. And sometimes they counted more than one way at the same time, depending on what they wanted to emphasize. They were not driven by the clock the way that we are. They did not have a calendar functioning the same way ours does. We are slaves to our calendar. We are slaves to the year. It's 2020, and there's no change in that, right? We've locked this thing in. That was not the case back then. And so if one references the 3rd year and one references the 4th year, and they're talking about the same day, it has something to do with what is their marker of reference. Who are they talking to? And now this part's from memory here. If I recall, the way that this is dealt with is, are you counting it from when Jehoiakim was coronated? Or are you counting it from when Jehoiakim, when his father died, right? Something like that. That might not be the narrow one. You have to go back and listen to that first episode because I don't remember it. But it's something like that. And that both ways are legal ways to count in the ancient world. And so that Jeremiah, writing kind of at the same time as Daniel, more or less, in different continents, so far as they were concerned, not really, well, kind of, depends on how you count the Middle East, in different countries, they might as well have been different continents, that they would both count differently, but in ways that are authentically usable. Like, this isn't even like close to an argument. This is so far from an argument. The only argument here is that you're too arrogant to think that anybody in history was different than you. And to think that, that what you assume now about how history should feel has to be the judge, the arbiter of everything everybody else said, although you would never apply it so much to any other part of history that you would therefore discount everything that's said after it just because they did get one date wrong. That is what they do to Daniel. But you still, you wouldn't even do it. You would give it the attention. We, modern American Christians who are conservative, need to do this with the New Testament. That's kind of my argument about the language here again, the English here again. We need to not read our assumptions back into this thing. And I'm going to contest here that as American Lutherans of the Missouri Synod, we got some assumptions. We have some great stuff. But you don't know your assumptions are assumptions until you test them against the Scripture. We don't have assumptions, we only have Scripture. Okay, then test it. Because, if you just say you don't have any assumptions, well, that's an assumption. Right? I mean, it's not the end-all be-all argument, but it is kind of a thing. All right. So, that argument about the first chapter of Daniel, it's an historical anomaly. It's where they go. But they also deal with then, and this is why we ended up here, the lack of certain mentioned names in the historical record outside of Daniel. So a good example is Belshazzar. This is the guy that caused me my problem, that I was reached out to by one of you to say, maybe wrong. And right, I was wrong. Belshazzar, this is the guy who's sitting at dinner, having a party, got a bunch of people over, out on the deck, got the pool there. The wives are going to go away early. We got the girls coming later. I mean, nasty kind of stuff, drinking deep. And he says, hey, in my first year here, first weeks here, is the king of Babylon, king of the world, king of kings. I think I would like to toast our power and our gods by pulling up those holy implements. Do you remember seeing these down in the treasury? Those holy implements, they were nice from that temple. And the guy, I can't think of his name now, Jehoiakim, he may have actually had to be around at this point. He might have been dead by then. I don't wonder when he died. But he was a noble at a certain point in the life of the Chaldeans. He was relieved or brought out of the prison, not by evil Marduk, I don't believe, but by, maybe it was though. I'm trying to remember. Oh man, it just all ties together and starts to mush. In any case, one of the sons of Nebuchadnezzar brings him out and sets him among the nobility of Babylon. And this is how you get to Zerubbabel going back home as a governor eventually in the line of Jesus and all that kind of stuff. But he's like, hey, let's mock this guy maybe even, right? Remember how his people have this stuff? Now let's get those holy implements. Let's bring them up. Let's drink it. Let's get drunk out of that stuff. And then they start toasting their gods and blaspheming Yahweh with his own Levitical, Sinai created holy implements. Aaron touched this stuff, right? Moses spoke of it from the tent as God described how it was to be made. And as they're doing this banshee of a hand just appears among them, kind of thing, right? I think I could set this part of the story up better, and I probably did back when I was telling it before. But to describe this is where I want a geistly hand. I want like a good way to do it. I can see it in my head like as a movie, but it's hard to tell it, right? Like some lady in the corner, what's that? And the guys, what do you mean? And they all turn and they look, and they're glowing with green and deathly and pale, bones sticking out of its, it's like zombie-esque with bones sticking out of every edge of it, and long fingernails. Is a hand with no body. It's nobody's hand. Father joke, watch out. It's a hand without a body, disembodied hand. And it's there, and it's moving amongst them with its long finger outstretched, and it goes to the wall, and it starts to scrape the wall. And like in the wall by shimmering power or blood or what, I don't know. It writes upon the wall, mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. many tekel upharsin. And now they can't even read it, I don't think. Like, they don't even, it's just like symbols. What is that? Was it Hebrew? Was it Greek? Was it German? Certainly wasn't ancient Chaldean. Okay. They couldn't read it. And there's this whole hubbub. Like, what the heck? The hand goes away. The writing's there on the wall. What was this? What book was that? I don't know if any of you are into the, sorry, coffee. The Stormlight Archive, Brandon Sanderson. I've read all 3. I think I've only got 3 that are out. It's decent read, long read. Brandon Sanderson's the guy who finished the Robert Jordan series when he died and left it unfinished, and did a much better job finishing it than Jordan did for the previous 6 books or so. Although Jordan wrote 4 great books at the start. Brandon Sanderson was the one who was like brought in to like find this guy's like millions of pages of notes and finish this story. So he's got his like life work so far as he's concerned. He's got a bunch of stories, but it's called the Stormlight Archives, and it's pretty good. It's tough to get into. I didn't like the 3rd book as much. 2nd book was phenomenal. In any case, a major character in that, he keeps having these seizures, and during these seizures, he's having visions. And whenever he wakes up from the vision, or at least sometimes when he wakes up from the vision, he's been like in a locked room so no one else can see it. He's a noble, and so all his people don't want anybody else to know he's having these seizures, so they won't stop following him, especially since there's kind of a battle between him and another guy for control of stuff. And so, he's kept in these locked rooms during these seizures, which always go with these big storms that are going over. Really cool world development. Sanderson's a master of world development. Whether the story's any good is debatable sometimes, but I've also read his now I can't think of it. It's with the metal, allomancy. Magic in this world's all based upon like using metal and swallowing it and then burning it. It's really, really cool. World development is phenomenal. So he's locked in this room, has a seizure, he wakes up, and like there's just stuff written on the wall, and it's like 12 days. What do you mean 12 days? Well, it says 12 days. Well, what do I do with this? I'm in a locked room. I passed out. I woke up. Somebody, did they come in through the window? I don't know. Was it me? I don't know. I wrote 12 days on the wall. What does it mean, 12 days? Right. So that's just happened to Belshazzar, right? And all those people, and they're like freaked out, and justifiably so. If you woke up this morning and on your bedroom wall it said, imagine like Dwarven or Orcan or Elven runes are just inscribed in glowing gold on your wall. Holy, you're gonna fall on your knees and pray, right? Well, that's not what Belshazzar does. He freaks out, but he does he calls the sorcerers, the magicians, those who speak for the gods in his place. Although it's interesting because previous kings and his fathers had more or less said everyone should call upon the true God, who this guy Daniel knows, and Daniel's still there, but he doesn't know about Daniel somehow. Long story there. That actually gets back to our Narrows, which we'll come back to. So these guys come in and they can't read it, right? I don't know what it is, which I don't get these guys. I would so affect it. Like, look, it's a weird rune that nobody can read, right? The king's freaked out. Hey, king, I can read it. It says that you should enjoy more chicken and less pork, right? Or, it says that next year will be a normal year with maybe some rain and maybe some famine. That's what it says. We're good. And if they knew their history at all, it says that the next time that there is bumper crops, you should store some up in case there's a famine. The gods would like you to do well. Like, why do they not lie? I don't get it. They're pagans. They're pagan sorcerers. Why do they not lie? But they don't. They don't lie. They say we can't do it. And long story short, it's already long and longer. His mom, which may have been his grandma or his great grandma or his mom, says, "Don't you remember the guy that we call now? I'm Belteshazzar, not Belshazzar, but Belteshazzar. I think I got it wrong earlier. I confused the two. So Daniel's name is Belteshazzar in the Chaldean, which has to do with Bel, the god of the Chaldeans, saved the king. Right? It's his name. And don't you remember? God saved the king, that greatest of all sorcerers, who your father trusted so implicitly. And so they bring him in, they bring Daniel in, and he reads it. Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. There it is. That's what it says. And I'll tell you what it means, too, because you don't know the language. It means measured, weighed, found wanting. It's all about balances and scales. Imagine, like, you're measuring the silver coin against a lead weight to make sure that it's not got fake metal in it. And Daniel says, well, this is you, Belshazzar. This is you. Measured, weighed, found wanting. And tonight, your kingdom will be taken from you. And that very night it happened. And the Persians take over the city, and all the historians go, it's all a myth, because there was no Belshazzar. All the historians, from Porphyry, I don't know if he did it specifically, from the 18th century, it's all stupid. There is no Belshazzar. And in the last episode that we did on Daniel, is way back, you're going like a year ago now, I think, I tried to make the case that Belshazzar is a name for Nabonius. Nabonius was a great-grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, something like that. Third or fourth in line. They went pretty quick. There were like two guys that only reigned for like a year, right? So it went pretty fast. After Nebuchadnezzar, there was not really a good Babylonian king. And I'm not talking Christian-wise. I'm talking like earth-wise. There's a reason they fell. So I tried to make the case it was Nabonius. You could also make the case... Actually, I didn't make that case. I then tried to make the case it was evil Marduk, who is the actual son of Nebuchadnezzar, right? Yeah. Or Abel Marduk. And not a good king either. But here's what's just so beautiful about archaeology. So I did all of that, and one of you wrote to me, you were wrong, and I was wrong. Here's the funny thing. So the 1800s were a long time ago, right? Right? Like what? It's 2019? Oh, no, wait, it's 2020, isn't it? Yeah, 2020. How long ago was 1870? 150 years. It's a long time ago. Has much changed? I mean, I know I made the argument nothing's really changed, and that's true, but like, look, I'm looking at this like little black thing on top of this bigger black thing that's shooting light at me with words on it, and the little black thing has blue lines and a circle, and then in it is this thing that looks like it's looking at me, because you are, but it's not you. It's a wire, and it runs, and it goes, right? I mean, that's just like the last couple of years. 150 years ago. Someone makes the argument, well, we've looked at all the historical data, and there's no such person as Belshazzar. So, therefore, Daniel's wrong. And ever since, everyone just says, well, there's no such person as Belshazzar. There's no such person. There's no such person. There's no such person. There's no such person. Now, I really would like to just jump immediately to the quote, but I'm going to have a little trouble with that because I don't know where it is. I've been talking too long. Oh, where is it? Come now. Leaving them with bated breath. Come now. This is what happens when you don't make notes. Okay, well, that could have been done better. The long and short, I can find it if I just read through it and read it out loud. The long and short, have you guessed it already? Oh, see, so Josephus, yeah, so the argument was there even in the 300s. Josephus defends the historicity of Daniel by countering that Belshazzar may have been the name for Nabonidus. I said Nabonius earlier, Nabonidus. However, beginning in the 1860s, Babylonian sources came to light naming Belshazzar the son of Nabonidus. In the 1860s. They came to light. So it took a while for scholarship to catch up to this. It's not even new! In the 1860s, there came to light a historical record of a guy named Belshazzar. He is the son of Nabonidus. He was made regent over Babylon in the 3rd year of his father's reign. All memory of Belshazzar has been lost to history outside the Bible, and works dependent on it. This seemed to furnish proof that the writer of Daniel 5 had to have had a contemporary to the events, since later writers, especially the Maccabean writers, would have no knowledge of Belshazzar. So it's even better, though. So it's so much better than just finding that there actually was a Belshazzar in a record that's not from the Bible. Is that Belshazzar was such a bad and short-lived king, like the story of Daniel tells. He was so bad and short-lived that even though we have records of every other king of Babylon and who they are and what they did, they didn't even record him. Because he got killed like the night of his, the night of his coronation. He didn't even get recorded. And so all of history, with the exception of a couple of records that were randomly finally found in corners, not the main stuff, all of history has forgotten this guy even exists, except Daniel, who was actually there and wrote it down. And we're sitting here from the arrogant 20th century saying, well, he's just making stuff up. He has no knowledge of ancient history. He was the only one who knew. That's stunning. That is a stunning counter to the accusation that Daniel is historically inaccurate when he is the only guy through all the chain of normal history who recounts this guy who actually was there at that specific time. How is some Jew in the Hellenistic Seleucid period fighting against Antiochus Epiphanes IV hundreds of years later going to know about this guy and reference him by name? How is he going to do that since there are no other records of this guy? The only one who could do this is a guy who sat there during the fall of the Babylonian Empire after this guy's coronation into the Persian and lived to tell the story. Like Daniel. I mean, is that cool or what? Golly, that's cool. I mean, it's just, I don't, you have these moments when you doubt, don't you? I mean, we talked about this, I think, last week a little bit. You gotta have moments when you doubt. There's no way. If you're paying attention, you're gonna doubt. You're gonna wonder. Oh man, this stuff is just so super fantastic. It's really hard to just always believe it because the tenets of modern thought just seem so powerful. And what I love is that while that's definitely there as a temptation and it hits you, it hits your soul sometimes, you get these moments here too where it's like, oh, wait a minute. For hundreds of years, we derided Daniel as unbelievable. And that's the kind of thing that leads to these doubts I'm talking about. It's the tool the devil uses to make you doubt. Hundreds of years. Only to find out we're idiots. We're complete idiots. We're in the dark and talking like we see. We're blind men shouting about what an elephant looks like. You know that one? What a terrible argument. We're blind men shouting about what an elephant looks like when the elephant's talking and saying, I look like this. And we're like, no, you don't. I know better. And the light comes on. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, he does look like that. Despite the clear refutation of the skepticism concerning Belshazzar's existence, critical scholars continue to dismiss the story. They challenge two statements about Belshazzar, that he was the son of Nebuchadnezzar and that he was a king. Now, this is fair, okay? So he's called the son of Nebuchadnezzar by Daniel, but technically he would have been the son of Nabonidus, significantly removed from Nebuchadnezzar. We're going to come back to that. The issue of Darius the Mede is also thrown in for this reason, because unlike Belshazzar, we still have not found an actual recording of who Darius the Mede is. And I'm going to spend more time on that in the future, I think, because he does in the commentary. Critical scholars often supplement these historical objections by other observations. Among these, I think this is so interesting. Among these, the presence of Persian and Greek loan words, as well as the type of Aramaic and Hebrew found in the book. Okay, so again, you got to be a real nerd to make these arguments and to like them. So cheers. But with that said, so let me translate for you. They make the argument that the reason Daniel cannot be from the guy Daniel who would have lived at the time it says he lived at is because there are words in the book, the Greek words, Hebrew words, and Aramaic words that he couldn't possibly have known at that time. That he would not have known or used these words. And so the fact that they're there show that it's from a different time. Now, and this is incontrovertible, of course. You're a fool to not know this. I mean, think about it. If you were reading something like you found a new piece of Shakespeare, someone's like, oh, I found a new thing of Shakespeare. And he's like, La computadora, right? It's like written in like the sonnet from Shakespeare. It's talking about the computer and the Wi-Fi. You're going to be like, yeah, fake, right? Totally fake. Obviously so. So like the argument is, it totally makes sense. If the book of the Bible has random words from other countries and different times, then that would call into question, at the very least, its transmission. It's copying. But the thing is, the argument that Greek, Aramean, and Hebrew words on loan from other places that couldn't be there are in the book, well, that's the way they'll say it. Like when they're going to argue it, that's what they're going to say. You haven't accounted for, and they're going to drop 3 languages on you, Hebrew, Greek, and Aramean in the text, and that calls it all into question. what they're not going to say is, well, there is the possibility that some of the language, maybe from these three languages, maybe would have had trouble being known by a guy named Daniel at that time. And that really, one of them is not even an argument, and the other one really actually goes against my point. And then the other one is totally easy to answer. Instead, they're gonna act like it's all this really solid wall, right? So, the presence of Persian and Greek loanwords, Aramaic and Hebrew. So here's the argument, right? Driver is the guy who S.R. Driver summarizes it this way, and this will be often quoted in the literature, I guess. The Persian words presuppose a period after the Persian Empire had been well established. The Greek words demand, the Hebrew supports, and the Aramaic permits a date after the conquest of Palestine by Alexander the Great, which is many years later, multiple generations later. You got Cyrus, you got Darius, you got Xerxes, right? All that's passed through. And before Alexander comes along, and so he's saying again, follow the language is really interesting. The Persian words presuppose, the Greek words demand, the Hebrew words support, and the Aramaic permits a date much later for Daniel. So if you go and start looking at, we'll just skip that part. He goes into a little bit of a tangent on, well, how did this book show up? Classic redaction theory that there were multiple authors and some guy just kind of threw it all together in a pile. He wasn't very smart, so it didn't make a lot of sense, and he left all these marks that we can see that show us how they have different sources, and it isn't really his own unique work, certainly not from his time. And so they end up like, well, then what are the sources, right? And like, it's all over the map. Nobody can decide what the sources actually are. I mean, they do this with the New Testament too, with the Q stuff. Nobody can decide what the sources actually are. Up to 10 different authors, one for each chapter. I mean, it gets to be like nonsensical. You can't even study the book at a certain point. There's no knowledge anymore. But while there's no widespread agreement as to the composition of the stories and a little consensus on that, there is widespread agreement that the final redaction took place in 165 BC, the time of the Maccabees. And it's all, again, related to Darius, Belshazzar. These are the tools that they use to just foist their assumption about non-supernatural history onto the text, right? So what we're going to do then, again, we've answered Belshazzar a little bit. Darius will take another time later, but I want to deal with these arguments about the words, because the words, it's just absolutely fascinating. So the Hebrew language characteristics in Daniel. I'm sorry, does that sound boring to you? Why the Hebrew of Daniel is the Hebrew of Daniel's time, and not the Hebrew of Judah's Maccabeus time. So Simon's really gentle here. When Driver wrote his quoted dictum about the language of Daniel, that bit above demands, the Greek demands, he could not have foreseen the effect of later research on the discoveries of ancient Hebrew, right? So this is the main point we should take from this today for all of us. Like you really don't know what we might still discover about the ancient world. So when you start saying there's none of this, there's no of that, well, that's an argument from silence, right? An argument from silence is anything but logical, and certainly is not conclusive. I've never seen God, therefore he doesn't exist. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a reason to believe in God. Pascal's wager, I don't think is a reason to believe in God. But like, your argument from silence is like technically idiotic. Like it's one of the ways you define what idiocy is. Did you make an argument from silence? Oh, you're a moron. I'm sorry, this is not a pejorative term. This is not me trying to describe how I don't like you. I'm trying to describe the level of thinking you're working at. Like a first grader thinks this way. But grown people who study reasonable conclusions don't make arguments from silence and call them conclusive about anything. There's no infant baptized in the Bible. Yeah, you're right. There's no women communed either. What do we do about that? Should we commune the ladies or not, guys? I don't know. I mean, they've kind of taken over the place. Can't we have something that's just for us these days? We're not allowed to smoke at meetings anymore. Oh, man, the history of the LCMS. If you don't get it, all that, I'm sorry. Go ask your pastor. He may not get it either. Tangent. I remember it was not the Mission Plant Church, but after, I'd sat on my patio and read the Sasa and didn't have work for 9 months, which I should have taken as a license to just love my life. But instead, I lived in fear the whole time. And two babies at that point, one new one. I did receive a call to go down to Philadelphia. And at some point in the Philadelphia area, I was cleaning out the church office. There was no secretary. It was just me. I took some heat for cleaning it. I mean, they had a computer. The computer, I think, let me remember here. I think the computer had, I think the RAM was like 25 megs. Something like that. 25 megs. Like it took like 15 minutes to boot. It was so bad. Anyhow, I cleaned the place out, the drapes, just dusty and gross, anything. Way back in the corner of a bookshelf, behind some old liberal books, charismatic books. Why are those always kind of hanging around places that are having trouble? I found 2 or 3 glass cigarette ashtrays. I thought, well, what the heck is this? Why in this, right off the sanctuary in this cute little northeastern church, white steeple church, in this dusty, gross room? But like, it's kind of what you'd expect a little bit in an LCMS world, with LCMS books like catechetical helps and like, I forget who the commentary is I really don't like from that era. Anyway, Cressman, is it Cressman I don't like? I can't remember. There's 2 of them. Why are there these like glass cigarette ashtrays sitting here? That's really weird. So I pulled them out and I started asking around. And nobody at the church knew they were there. I don't know where that came from. No idea. And my buddy, I won't add him by name, but my buddy, a local pastor there, he's now in Wisconsin. I asked him about it and he goes, "Oh, well, that's from before women's suffrage." I said, "What? What do you mean it's before women's suffrage?" Well, back when the men voted and you only had men on the council was where they went to smoke because they weren't allowed to smoke at home. And it's like, oh man, that makes so much sense. I don't know if it's true. It makes so much sense though. So like council, the reason why people didn't mind having really long, boring council meetings as men was because it was their smoke room. And they would go to church and do the lack of business that takes too long, right? Let's debate whether we buy some light bulbs, and they'd get their chance to smoke their cigarettes for the week together in the office. I'm told this was not a unique scenario in the Missouri Synod in the 50s and 60s. This was pretty standard practice. Now, how did I get on this? I just think it's hilarious to me. Where it's not hilarious, I should say. Thanks for the likes, by the way. Where it's not hilarious, by the way, is where it does say something. There's something here. It's not about smoking. It's not about tobacco. It's about men having a place to be men and not having it taken from them. Because when you take away from men the place where they can be men, well, they die. Their masculinity dies. And I don't know, ladies, you kind of just have to trust me on this one. Guys, you all know this is true. If you have 3 guys in a room, they're hanging out and talking, there's a certain feel. And if a lady walks in, it changes. And what happens is respect goes up. Okay? This isn't derogatory. Like, they're like, oh, we should stop being animals now because she's here. But with that stopping being animals in terms of like, we're not going to burp and fart, right? There's also a level of, we're going to withhold our actual thinking. We're not going to talk. We'll talk, but we're going to like put a new filter on the whole thing, and we're going to defer to her talking. If she talks, we will not correct her. We will not correct her. Now, that's good, I think. It's called chivalry. It is to say, you, woman, are of such value to humanity that we would not want to embarrass you in front of others who are not your husband, your father, your love, right? Your children. We don't want to embarrass you anyway, but especially we're not going to embarrass you publicly. We wouldn't want to do that. That would be awful. It would be shaming. We don't need to do that. And so rather than say, you're wrong, we're going to say, which we would say to a guy, Like, that's stupid, we would say to a guy. You're not going to say that to a lady. Instead, we just kind of go, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, interesting. And we just kind of keep it inside. Okay, so now take that and put that into politics in the church. That explains almost everything in one way right now. If you go to a voters meeting or a council meeting, like that's a big piece of it. Everything that's kind of collapsing is because guys won't talk. Because they don't want to be put in a position where they have to tell somebody, married or not, that she's wrong publicly. And the cigarette story is what taught me that. It's not just about getting together to have the cigarettes. When we brought you ladies into the governance in the congregation, in that way, we de facto took the guys out. This is how it works. I mean, guys are still there. If you gotta win someone, you might still follow, and you can kind of move stuff around. Through gentility, you can manage it, but only with the most capable of people. And the fact is, we're not all capable people. Anyway, back to Daniel. Cigarettes. So somehow we got onto cigarettes, and what was this? We're dealing with Daniel. We're dealing with ancient Hebrew and the dating of the conquest. Okay. Yeah, we didn't actually start it, did we? How did I get out of that? Dear goodness. All right. So, driver, this guy who's oft quoted. Oh, how he couldn't have foreseen, what would happen later. Now, somehow that's what did it. Anyhow. So he asserts this. So the point here is that the guy we quoted earlier who says that none of the language even allows you to consider Daniel as the real author, and all of it more or less forces you to say he wasn't, he couldn't see the future. So he didn't know he was missing a lot of the information about actual Hebrew. So when he says the Hebrew supports a date after the conquest, after Persia takes over Babylon, the Hebrew supports it, he was so dead wrong as to be, again, idiotically nonsensical, but it's not his fault, because he was only working with what he knew, and he was right so far as what he knew, but what he knew wasn't everything. And so the problem, again, is the arrogance of thinking that you already know all that will ever be known about the past. Argument from silence. That's kind of how we got there. I still don't know. How do we get from argument of silence to cigarette ashtrays? I don't know. But arguments from silence are the thing that we want to be really careful about, especially historically. Just because we don't have it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So, he goes a little, more into the weeds here. Driver again says there's nothing about the Hebrew of Daniel that could be considered extraordinary for a bilingual, or perhaps in this case, I'm sorry, this isn't him. No, this is a counter conclusion. Based on current evidence, there is nothing about the Hebrew of Daniel that could be considered out of the ordinary for a bilingual or even trilingual speaker of the language in the 6th century BC at the time it says he wrote. Moreover, Daniel's Hebrew can now be compared to the Hebrew of sectarian scrolls from Qumran. These sectarian documents from the 2nd century BC onward show a number of characteristics of Hebrew language written in the Hasmonean. This is 165 to 37 BC, and the Herodian after 36 BC. The difference between the Hebrew portions of Daniel and the Hebrew of these documents is striking. So here's the way to look at this one. So now you're saying that Daniel was written by a Jew living during the Hasmonean period, which is, again, the Maccabean period. Hasmoneans were the Maccabees, when they kind of ruled for a while, it was the Hasmonean dynasty. So you're saying that it was written during that period to talk about the fall of Antiochus Epiphanes IV after his fall, and using Nebuchadnezzar's son as an example of this for the sake of this building of a kingdom in the 2nd century. And you're making your argument based on linguistic evidence and how the linguistic Hebrew couldn't possibly be from 600 BC. It had to be from 200 BC. And yet when you look at other documents from 200 BC and you put Daniel next to it, it's like you're trying to read Greek beside it. Like it's not quite that bad, but it's like King James versus NIV. Like I don't care who you are. If you try to write like the King James version of the Bible, like you're going to write a letter. You're going to write King James style. Let's not say a letter. You're going to write an essay. You're going to write a 25-page essay, King James style English. Go do it right now. Oh, I can do that. Thee, thy, thou. Okay, you go do that. And you let some scholar who spent a lifetime in just that language era look at your work, he's going to be like, well, look at this. They never did that. This doesn't fit at all. This looks like it was written by someone today trying to mimic that. And that's what they're accusing Daniel of doing. And yet when you look at it, it looks like the actual stuff from the 6th century. Like it couldn't have been done. You couldn't do that. Nobody could do that. So that's how the Hebrew doesn't support a late date for Daniel, but in fact mandates an early date for Daniel. That's just one of the 4 languages. That's the easy one. But a quote from Archer concludes this. It seems abundantly clear that a 2nd century date for the Hebrew chapters of Daniel is no longer tenable on linguistic grounds. In view of the markedly later development exhibited by the 2nd century documents in the areas of syntax, word order, morphology, that's how the words are shaped, vocabulary, spelling, and word usage, there is absolutely no possibility of regarding Daniel as contemporary to 2nd century stuff. Otherwise, we must surrender. I love this. Otherwise, what do you mean? So if we're going to try to make the case from linguistics alone that Daniel is 2nd century, we must surrender linguistic evidence altogether and assert that it is completely devoid of value in the face of subjective theories derived from anti-supernaturalistic biases. If it isn't from the 6th century as Hebrew, then we don't even need to study language. It doesn't make a sense anymore. There's nothing we could do, right? Yeah. So Aramaic. Moving on, next language. Driver was less certain about the Aramaic evidence and so stated only that he thought it permitted a date after 332. Subsequent studies have confirmed that the Aramaic of Daniel is Imperial Aramaic, which was current from about the 7th century BC to about 300 BC. And he quotes some various people on this, but the long and short is that the Aramaics from the right time period and not the Aramaic that a Maccabean would have known. Persian and Greek loanwords. Daniel's Hebrew and Aramaic use a relatively high proportion of loanwords from 2 languages. Akkadian, which I don't know much about, but I think it's a really cool word, Akkadian. It's from Grecia. It's from, Proto-Greece, and Old Persian. In addition, there are 3 Greek loanwords used in Daniel chapter 3. That Daniel contains loanwords from Old Persian is acknowledged by nearly all scholars, though some caution should be exercised in identifying them since little evidence of Old Persian survives. So people say, Daniel's got these words that are not Hebrew, they're not Aramaic, they're Old Persian. And he just put Persian words, Old Persian words, into his book. And now Steinman says, yeah, that's what we think, but we actually don't have them recorded anywhere else. So they look like Old Persian, but we don't know. This is the only source. But they are, if Persian, they are specifically Old Persian. This is from Kitchen's commentary. The recognized divisions of Persian language history within Iranian are. So the language of Persian has these eras, right? English, we have modern English. We got Shakespearean English or Victorian English, which are not quite the same thing. We got Middle English, which is pre-Shakespeare. We got Old English, which is basically like Norse, with some Germanic Saxon thrown in. And if you tried to read Old English, I've done it. I studied the history and structure of the English language. I know it's boring, but I find it fascinating. You try to read Old English, you won't be able to do it. As an English speaker, you will say, this is not English. But see, it is. You just don't know it because the language has devolved. It always is. Always devolving. It's devolved that much. It's changed that much. So these Persian words are Old Persian. Very narrow category. And here's the divisions of how Persian language developed. I just gave you English. Here's Persian. Old Persian was prior to 300 BC, which means prior to the Maccabees. Middle, from about 300 BC to AD 900, right? So Koine Greek time into Latin time, really. And New Persian from 900 to the present. The fact that, continuing to read, the fact that the Iranian element in Daniel is from Old Persian and not Middle indicates that the Aramaic of Daniel is in respect pre-Hellenistic, before Alexander, which means before Antiochus Epiphanes. Pre-Hellenistic, it drew on no Persian from after the fall of that empire and not on any Middle Persian words and forms. He couldn't have quoted the Persian words he did after the fall of Persia. Wouldn't have happened. Therefore, the presence of Persian words in Daniel does not present an argument for a date of composition later than about 560 BC. Not even close to the Maccabean times. The Greek words in Daniel, shifting, are often considered the strongest indication, as Coxon observes. I'm not going to read it. Coxon presents evidence. I will read it. So, liberal critic, of all the linguistic arguments which have been used to debate the concern and age of the Aramaic sections of Daniel and the date of the composition of the book, the Greek loans seem to provide the strongest evidence in favor of a 2nd century BC. Now remember, the other 3 now show conclusively it couldn't have been the 2nd century. Okay? Well, but there's these Greek words that make it the 2nd century. It demands it, right? And yet, the same guy, apparently, when dealing with the etymology of one of the words, indicates that it came from an older word that would have been there before. The Ionic versus the Attic, and this gets into the history and structure of the Greek language, which I don't know much about either. Although the Greek has such cool things, Akkadian, Ionic, Attic. Those just sound cool to me. Anyway, probably has something to do with a game called, what was that game called? Nintendo game. It was a lot like, and you guys don't like me because I like Adventure of Link, right? It was like that style. You even look the same. You hit with a sword the same way, and oh goodness. It was set in Greece, and you're fighting against like the pagan, not pagan, like the Greek mythological beasts, and you have to go save your beloved who got bit by a snake and was down in Hades, which is a lot like Greek mythology, but they didn't really do it quite the same. Started with an O. What a game. Anyhow, you go to Attica, I believe, in that game, and so Attic Greek. I like the word. Well, maybe it's just my 8-year-old in me. In any case, there's only 3 Greek loanwords in Daniel. All of them, in the same chapter, all of them references to musical instruments. We talked about this when we went through chapter 3. They're all names for musical instruments. And, the long and short of this, a guy named Yamachi has done, I guess, the magisterial work on the evidence. But it's not like Persia never traded with the Greeks. And so contact between the Near East and the Aegean, well before Alexander and any of the wars that would have taken place with the Persians, provides plenty of evidence of early Semitic influence on the Greek language. So the language of Aramaic and Hebrew actually seeping into the Greek language further back, which would mean that they had contact, which would mean that they could trade things, which would mean that maybe they saw an instrument and said, ooh, that's pretty cool. I'm a king. I want that. So he concludes, we may safely say that the presence of Greek words in the Old Testament book is not proof of a Hellenistic date. Such evidence has led critical scholars to admit, and he quotes a critic here, the evidence for Greek influence on Daniel is too slight to prove anything. Therefore, neither the Persian nor the Greek loanwords offer any proof. Of themselves, they do not provide any conclusive evidence. The best that can be said about the linguistic evidence is that it suggests that Daniel was not written before 560 BC, and certainly was not later than 300 BC, which means there's no way it was written during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. No way. Then you got the historical data, where he's back into the lack of evidence, apparent contradictions. We talked about this already. If there's an apparent contradiction between Daniel and some other data, critics automatically assume Daniel to be in error. But the assumption of Daniel's lack of trustworthiness means that critics didn't bother to consider possible solutions, and shows what at first blush, that could show what at first blush appears to be a contradiction is not, as is the case with Daniel 1 and Jeremiah 25. These apparent contradictions are resolved. I love this. This is probably my favorite quote in the whole thing so far. These apparent contradictions are resolved if one pays attention. He says more than that, but the period should just be there. These apparent contradictions are resolved if one pays attention. And it's just so true. It's that whole point about time from earlier. It's our assumptions about the past. If you're going to make pronouncements about the past, you should pay attention to the past. If you pay attention to the ways that information was reported in ancient sources and understand them according to their own conventions, there are no contradictions or arguments against Daniel aside from an anti-supernaturalistic bias, which, as in Gary Habermas's conversation with Antony Flew on the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, valuable little resource. Antony Flew, the guy who wrote the book on atheism for the 20th century, in that book, he acknowledges, in the face of the evidence being presented by Habermas, that the only argument against the resurrection of Jesus is that it's impossible. That's the only argument. There is no historical argument against it. There is no evidential, archaeological argument against it. The only argument is that it can't be true. It just can't. Why? Because it's supernatural. That's why. anti-supernaturalistic bias, anti-miracle bias. And that's the only argument for Daniel being a 2nd century BC book, is anti-supernaturalistic bias, which makes you have to ask, why then do some conservative Christians listen to this stuff? Hello, Missouri Synod. We got guys here from the last era. I mean, they didn't buy into the whole Jonah wasn't real thing, but they definitely bought into the Daniel dating thing, and they've been teaching it out there. Why? What'd you get? What'd it gain us? Well, Darius was never mentioned in history. Okay. I mean, do you have record of Ruth other places too? Was she not real? Abraham probably was. I don't know if Abraham was. From contemporaries? Job? Well, of course they go there, right? Oh, Job, I don't know. Probably poetry. You might just be a play. Okay. For Pete's sake. For Pete's sake. All right. So we are still in a podcast, and yet I'm looking at YouTube again here, and I want to check out. Oh, there we go. So podcast peoples, don't wallow in the muck. Rock on. Podcast is paused, and we're back to YouTube here. What time is it? Thank you for bearing with me as we recorded that. 8:42. I got to be somewhere at 9. I had some questions I wanted to get to. I've seen you guys have been talking all the way. Look, you're talking about grape juice. I mean, what does that have to do? Am I just like a monkey dancing in the corner while you guys argue about theology? Is that what this is to you? Come on now. Let's see. I have a couple questions to pull up. I don't have a way to show them on screen just yet. Some comments from you guys in the last week, and I want to share them with you. I don't know why my camera will not stay on top of the screen now like it used to, but that's okay. All right, so. Oh, which one first? I want to do this one. So, good morning, everybody. Thanks for, again, hanging out. I thought that I'm not going to read many of the emails from you responding to last week's stuff. I thank you for all of it. I read all of it. I wrote thank you to a few of you. Thank you to all of you as best I could. But I want to read this one because, and if you don't like the video games, I'm sorry, this one may not work for you. But for me, this was really helpful as an analogy of why one of you listens. He said this in the game Dark Souls, which by the way I don't play, is way too hard. I don't got time for that. But God bless you for playing Dark Souls. That's tough stuff right there. In the game Dark Souls, everyone suffers from the possibility of becoming a hollow, or American language, a zombie. Along the way, there are bonfires where you can stop and rest. You level up. You meet other characters who haven't given up their humanity yet. Listening to the podcast is like stopping at a bonfire. It's confirmation that I'm not a zombie, that there are others in the fight, that the fire won't go out. It's awesome. And that's what church is supposed to be, by the way. That's what church, when it's really church, is. But it is a nice thing. I remember that first call to the mission plant that shut down for lack of funding to begin with. Oh, what a story. In New Jersey, way back when. I remember being about 2 or 3 months into that thing and thinking I was crazy. I did. I thought I was crazy. I'd gone through 4 years of seminary, and I believed all sorts of, I've been converted to Lutheran confessing Lutheran dogma. And I felt so alone. Nobody talked Lutheran or wanted to be. And I thought I was nuts. I thought I was crazy. And I remember that's when I started listening to Issues, Etc. pretty hard at that point. Because I wasn't alone when I listened to that show. I was alone. I was the only one out where I was, in the middle of farm, horse country, New Jersey, where they don't even really have supermarkets. It was a weird place. Rich place. Couldn't afford to live there at all. Oh, man. Anyway. Not being alone. That was huge. I had church every week. I was leading church every week, but I felt alone at church. So, cool. Good. He continues, I hope that's as coherent as it is in my brain. It was to me. And he mentioned something on tentatio. It's pretty good here too. Tentatio. Here's my attempt at a shorthand explanation of tentatio. I think this is pretty good. The experience of needing God. Oratio, meditatio, tentatio. Prayer, liturgy. No, is it liturgy? Oh, how was the first one? Liturgy. Oh, it's not study. I've lost the second one. I got to go back and look at notes. Liturgy, dogma. There it is. Liturgy, dogma, and where they meet in the experience of needing God. That's your temptation. It's when you find the need for God. You don't want it. You don't want the need for God. You say you do, but you don't. Not when you experience it. That's the tentatio that drives you back to liturgy and dogma. Oratio, meditatio, tentatio, liturgy, dogma, need for God. Ooh, I like it. That's good. That's the best you've got. That's pretty dang good, man. Pretty darn good. All right. So, that didn't work. Okay, the way this is laid out. Trying to get to another question here. If I hover, it should show up for me, but it's not. Come on, show up. Oh, it's just as big as it can be. Okay. Oh, one of you, I'm not going to go deep on this, but there was a link that was sent to me for a website. And I'm not even going to link the website because I don't want to give it traffic. Don't waste your time with this. Don't help promote this. When you go and you look at stuff, it gets put in the algorithms and then it shows up more. So if you find something like this, just ignore it. Like really, like they don't have a platform and they don't need a platform. And what this website is actually going to promote, it doesn't have any legs. It's not going to get a platform. Like there is not, like in the next 100 years, it's not going to do anything except for encourage people who are already atheists. So like why? What it is I guess someone in the LCMS, pastor, layperson, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I didn't spend many minutes looking, but I didn't see anything that actually would give you their name, which one might argue is cowardly, but I can understand if you're a pastor in the LCMS with this kind of point of view, you would want to be afraid of being heard saying this because we don't handle conflict well in the LCMS. And yeah, you should probably leave the LCMS if you actually think this, but the way we would do that would probably be a way that would ruin your life. And so I get it. Okay. It's still cowardly. It is, but I get it. So the page is there. I don't know who's doing it. And its point is that the Bible teaches universal salvation. We're not talking atonement. We're not talking, not tulip. We're talking everybody gets saved eventually. Full and total restoration of all creatures. I haven't read deep enough into stuff to see if he includes the devil in that one, but if you're going to go that way, you got to. Even Lucifer shall be redeemed and restored. But he probably doesn't go that far because he hasn't made the conclusion yet that realize that you got to keep going once you go down this road. So he's probably just making the argument that it's just all people. Jesus died for all. I mean, it's just the Calvinist side of it too, in a sense, right? The atonement is atoned for all, so therefore all will be redeemed. It must happen. God's will cannot be stopped. And that's the argument. Now, I prove it from Scripture. I show these verses that show where Scripture says these things about everybody. Okay, well, good for you. Same problem I got with tulip, man. What about the verses that say the opposite of that you are now discounting and throwing away? And particularly the ones about hell and people going to hell because they want to, because they refuse to repent. Oh, you're just going to let those ones not be there, like the Calvinists do. When they're dealing with election, they just ignore all of the universal stuff. Well, you're taking all the universal stuff, and you don't want to be a Pelagian because you like grace. Well, good for you. So your final answer is total restoration. Okay, fine, but you're ignoring verses, man. That's what it comes down to. And so that's why I don't want to spend a lot of time. I don't want to go in and dig into it and say, well, look, the long answer of this is that you're cutting 50 verses out of the Bible and you're just going to ignore them and say they don't mean what they say they mean. And that's not what we do as Lutherans. So you are ergo not Lutheran. And well, who cares about the name? I don't care about the name. You're not biblical, man. You don't tell me it's a scriptural argument if you're only going to use half the Bible. It's not a scriptural argument. So about that page, if you find it, ignore it. Honestly, ignore it. Don't write to him. Don't get mad at him. Let him go softly into the night. Don't ruin his life. He doesn't need his life ruined. He just needs to acknowledge, look, dude, this is not the place for that. The LCMS is not the place for that argument. You got plenty of churches, plenty of collapsing, old, angry, progressive churches that did that 100 years ago, and now they are where they are as a result. Go join them. Be honest. So cowardly, the other thing, it's not honest. It's not honest. If you are to be in the LCMS, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, weird and backward as we are, you subscribe to the Book of Concord of 1580 and the Small Catechism, which does not teach a total restoration. Even though you quote like one part of Luther's one answer in the Small Catechism. Like, come on. But you're ignoring the rest of it. Some proof does not equal a total combination of all proof. So be honest. Stop lying to us and to you. Don't change us. We're happy being stodgy, confessing Germans. Well, no, we're not quite that. We're happy being stodgy, confessing dogmatists of the Scriptures. So go do that somewhere else. Like, I won't hate you. The only thing I hate is the dishonesty of trying to do it here. And I think that if you really were going to want to do it here and change us, then you should put your face on the thing. But I really would encourage you not to do that. Like, that will not go well for you. We will be poorly behaving people because we're still immature. We are. And that's wrong too. It doesn't make us right. But don't put your face on it, even though it is cowardly to not. So then you should do the honest and brave thing and leave. That'd be the brave thing, the honest thing. When I complain, I'm not complaining about our dogma, ever. Ever. I'm trying to hold it tighter. Otherwise, I would leave. Because that'd be the only honest thing to do. All right. So, Pastor Fisk, you're sick of the topic, but if you're sick of the topic, ignore my email. However, my wife and I attended a Lutheran Christmas Eve service this year, the first ever. God bless you. And the experience was everything I'd hoped it would be, and also funny in this one Lutheran quirk. So that's good. So you had a good experience. You kind of had prepped yourself for it. You knew there was going to be some weird, and you got the candlelight silent night. Oh, so good. So good. So the pastor informed us as our candles were being lit that the previous year visitors had outnumbered members, and so now this year they didn't sing the German verses of Silent Night. He advised all of us to simply not sing if we they did sing it this year. He said, don't sing if you don't know the German verses. After the service was over, I told my wife that I actually kind of enjoyed it, being that I sang German, Italian, French, etc. in college. Her response was, of course you would. You're weird. Which is awesome. So this is kind of at the point though, right? So if the only not English you use in your congregation is the German verses to Silent Night on Christmas Eve, I'm going to go ahead and call that insular. If you use lots of historic languages that are in the liturgy and use them in the liturgy, I got no problem with German Silent Night. German wrote it, and it sounds beautiful in German. It does. It sounds way better in German. It's meant to be sung in German. Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. Also alles Schrift. I don't know if I have it all memorized. Alles Schrift, Wansum, something Acht. I mean, I don't really like German personally. I think there's prettier languages. So this year we didn't do it. For Pete's sake. So I'm sorry. This stuns me. I come to Rockford, and at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Rockford, they don't sing Silent Night on Christmas Eve with candles. It's like, no, we don't do that. We've never done that. You've never done that? You're in the LCMS, right? You've never done that? I've never heard of it. We don't have candles like that. We have to order them. Well, okay, then we're going to order them then. We're going to do it. You know what I found like a month and a half later in a closet? Like candles from like the 60s. You know, the handheld ones. And then someone told me, Pastor Fritz used to have us do that. Yeah, the 60s. Oh, so you did. It's not never. You forgot. So I've been introducing the practice. And so this year I had the thought, should I introduce the German? And I'm wrestling with these very same thoughts, right? Should I introduce the German? We got a guy who's German in the congregation, Olaf. He's very German. I don't know how else to describe it. When he speaks English, he speaks German. And so, he would love it. Hildegard, his wife, would love it, I imagine. But I've also got a bunch of people that not only are just, we have some visitors, but we also have some who just don't know it, right? So I debated like whether we should do it or not. And what I came to was not this year. And then what I really want to do next year is I want to have a soloist do it. Because there is something about a well-sung foreign language, but having the group try to do it, you end up stuck in like, how do I do it, right? You're trying to figure out the words rather than singing. And so if you have someone who loves singing German and they just sing it. Now, if you got a congregation that's already doing it, I wouldn't try to stop it either. But I would point out again, if that's the only foreign language you sing as a group, then you are de facto telling every culture that's not German they don't belong in your church at that moment. I mean, just think that through. Long and hard. If it's the only foreign language you sing is German, then you are telling other people they don't belong there because their languages don't belong there. Now, English, I guess, is there. So if they're only English speakers, then it's okay. But you're really insulating yourself. So what we did do this year, we're still doing it. And it's a little out of order, but we're using the O antiphons of Advent as our graduals, and I'm singing it in Latin, and then the congregation is responding with it in English. It's gorgeous. Oh, it's gorgeous. Anyhow, so yeah, German Silent Night. It is an experience though. Singing Silent Night in the dark with just the candlelight, the trees lights on. I mean, there's nothing quite like it. You know, the counterpart is your Good Friday Tenebrae stuff, right? Totally different thing. But like those two moments are like when Lutheran liturgy's doing it right, and you just know it. Now, why does it only happen in those two moments? That would be the question I have. Why are we not that good all the time? So, not sick of the topic, but others maybe. I don't know. Refisk, you talked a few weeks ago about how when you chant, I've debated putting this one in here. How when you chant, you put a modern edge or feel to it. Would you be able or willing to record an example and share with us so we can get a better idea as to what it would sound like? I will. I don't want to. I am not a vocalist by trade, and as a result of that, that reality, I'm pretty embarrassed about my voice. I kind of wanted to be. Oh, it's not in this one. Oh, I threw that one away. Crud. Maybe I won't do it. I kind of wanted to be like a band, rock and roll singer, and I was told at a young age that I didn't have the voice for vocals. I was told this by a musician who knew vocals pretty well, and like your voice isn't the kind of voice that would sing solos. Now, learning more later, I know that meant I'm not an opera singer. I'm not one of the three tenors. I'm a tenor, but I'm not one of the three tenors. And I'm not the one who in the choral, classical choral world would be called upon to sing alone. But what I do well is I buttress. I can carry the tune. I can carry the tune through stuff, and it is solid and on pitch. I have really good pitch, I think. Anyhow, as a result of that, I stopped trying to be in the band I was in, which was stupid because it's like, really, rock and roll has nothing to do with classical choral ensemble vocals. You can sing like this and it's still rock and roll. It really doesn't matter. But this is all the story to tell you. Like I'm hyper embarrassed about trying to sing. Like in a recording, I can do it in church because I just do it as practiced, and I love the music well enough. I can do it. I can lead a congregation, but that's a different thing than like YouTube, right? So I'm awful nervous about it, and now I don't have. I was going to pull out the Latin, so I could butcher the Latin, and you could all make fun of the bad Latin pronunciation rather than my voice. So I think what I have to do is grab. I don't have a tone set in front of me. This is going to take me a second. Where would I find this stuff right now? See, this is the kind of stuff that takes so long. I want to answer. I want to do it. Let's see. We need Bible. I need Bible. Bible would be first. Bible Gateway Psalm PSALM. Bible Gateway. So I should read the whole question too. I didn't really do that yet. Sorry, distractions. Pastor Fisk, you talked a few weeks ago that when you chant, you put a modern edge or feel to it. Would you be willing to record an example? So when I said, I try to make the chant not sound like completely foreign to our ear, I do two things to try to endeavor this. Because the thing is, okay, this all comes out of the argument, I just don't like chant. Okay, that's the argument. People make it. If you've never been in a church where you heard that argument made, every pastor has. If he's tried chant. Pastor, I don't mind the liturgy, I just don't like chant. I hate that argument. Because that argument is in fact this argument. Pastor, I just hate music. Oh, I don't mean that. Well, see, but that's what you said. Because chant is just singing. That's all it is singing. Pastor, I like church and liturgy. I just don't like singing. Okay, well then you certainly shouldn't have any influence on what we sing. So just shut up and listen. I mean, that actually would be really good for anybody ever to just be quiet and listen. I did it on Christmas Day. Oh, the festival Alleluia. I just closed my eyes and was in heaven for a moment. It was just so gorgeous to hear you, my people, singing. If you were there, it was the best. So it's good for you just to listen sometimes. But if you say I don't like chant, you're just saying you don't like singing. Because to conceive of chant as something other than just singing means it's not really what it is. Like all it is singing the words so that we don't have to try to stay on rhythm together talking them. Because that's really hard to do and awkward. You can't do it and pay attention to the words at the same time. And so they started singing them together. They found a really simple way of singing that anybody could learn very quickly. And we think it's hard. We're like, oh, it's so hard. We're doing it wrong then. So out of that, we're doing it wrong. I just don't like chant. Well, then you're doing it wrong. If you don't like chant and you like music, you're doing chant wrong. Out of that, I've started to ask, how can I, as a leader of the chant, try to do it in a way that minimizes anybody thinking it's chant, and instead gets them to think it's just a song. It's just a song. That's all it is. It's a song. And it goes together like the stupidest thing ever. I'm sorry. Do you know this? Does your pastor know this? Tell your pastor this gently if you have to. But it's so important. If the pastor speaks and the people sing in response, it's so wrong as to be like, I can't think of a song off the top of my head. What would it be? I need a song I have memorized. Zippity doo dah. It's like this, okay? If so, pastor speaks, people sing back. It's this. Zippity doo dah. Zippity day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine headed my way. I don't even have the right tune. But like that's what we're doing. Okay, that's how stupid we look. We're singing every other verse of a song all the way through the service. I don't like chant. Then talk the whole thing. Right? Don't use the music at all. But we can't get rid of those pieces. We love it. We've always done it this way. Okay, then sing the front part. It's just... But if you're going to have that happen, it's got to be beautiful, right? It can't just be bad. And so, in terms of like the Psalms and the introit, how do you, as a leader, try to introduce this? Because it wasn't something they were doing here recently at all. What it was. How do you introduce it in a way that doesn't make them have to have an intellectual argument about why this is the right way to chant, right? Like that doesn't convince anybody. What's going to convince somebody is they like the music. And so, again, there's two things that I've done on this, and one of them is I've just started writing new tones. And it isn't so much that the tones in the LSB are bad. Some of them kind of are. There's a couple that are okay. They're not bad. They're not great. Like for just 2-part tones, like go get your Lutheran Book of Worship green hymnal down and just like play with some of those tones. Like just way better tones. But I have a theory on this one here. And I'm willing to be wrong, but it seems to be working where we are. All the tones in Lutheran Book of Worship and Lutheran Worship, green hymnal, blue hymnal, actually all the way back to TLH when it was there, and then LSB, all the tones. Ooh, it's not quite true. I think there's 2 that do this, but they don't do it well. All the tones are 2 movements. I don't know what to call them because I'm not a musician. I shouldn't be the one having to say this to the world. 2 movements, 2 bars. Da 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 da. Right? Over. That's fine. Nothing that we do musically in the modern age does that. No one writes a song in 2/2. It's not quite the same thing, but it's the same point. If you're like, well, it doesn't translate. Of course it doesn't translate, but it actually is the same point. If you're trying to teach people to sing in 2-bar songs, you might as well write the song in 2/2 when you do your hymn. Our hymns aren't that way. all our hymns have 4 lines. Not all of them, but the majority of them, 4 lines. 4 lines, 4 movements of the tune. Sometimes it's like A, B, A, like really simple tune, right? Sometimes it's a little more complicated, but it's always 4. It's always a verse, right? It's a whole verse. Now, so when you're singing the Psalms with the 2 things, you're trying to just sing one verse as like detailed by the monks from the Middle Ages. Okay, it's fine. Nothing wrong with it. It may not be for the benefit of the church, but it's not for the Malasa necessarily. But so the idea is, well, what if we just had 4 musical movements? So it would be like a normal song. What if it was just a normal song? Would that work? Would that be okay? And so I started writing some. And then there's another bit in here that I probably shouldn't tell anybody, but I'm going to anyway. But first, before that, I want to tell this story first. Every single one of them that I've introduced, we've done them seasonally this year. So from late Pentecost into all the exile stuff, into end of the world stuff, into Advent, into Christmas, there's been a different one every season. The plan is to repeat them every year, so they actually will fit the season and be part of the seasonal feel. Every single one, people who are close to me have said, "Oh, that one's really hard. I don't like that one." The first week. And I haven't gone back to every single one of them and asked again by the 4 or 5 weeks in, but I can hear the difference in the congregation singing. The first week they're kind of struggling a little, and then the last week they're singing it. They're really singing it to the point where they corrected me just a week ago or so as a group. That's fantastic. So then the other thing I've done to do that, because I'm not a musician, I don't know enough, is in writing these, I've taken, I don't know how to say this, I'm not a musician, I've taken moves. Do you know how in that really bad song, Alleluia, by that guy from the 60s that nobody liked till it was in Shrek? You know that one? And now like people sing it at weddings and at churches and stuff, which is really kind of gross if you think about what the song says, because it's basically about sex. Anyhow, there's a certain genius in the song in its first verse, the verse that they actually use in the movie, and they use it to good effect, where he doesn't just make a musical move. I think of it like in terms of, I'm like talking in basketball talk, like, right? So I'm trying to break down the defense. I'm going to make a move, and then I'm going to make another move, and then boom, I'm at the hoop, right? Okay. So music, because I don't have the language, kind of does this, right? You have these moves. You have your opening move, you have your like secondary move, and you have your like your bridge move, right, or whatever. But it's even more than that. It's not as much as a whole bridge. It's like just a couple of notes. And in this song, he actually tells you he's doing it while he's doing it. He goes the third, the fourth, the minor fifth, the major chord to give the lift, and then there's a broken hallelujah, right? He's telling you what he's doing. He's telling you his move. And as he sings it, you're like, ooh, ooh, it's like the music is there. And he's saying it's David's special chord to please the Lord was to use the minor key, which is kind of cool too to think about that actually. But who knows? But it is true that our minor key songs are fantastic. The point is, like at that moment in that song, there's something that musician did that gets in the ear, right? And so what I started asking was, okay, well, can we steal some of that? Like, I really don't want to take, what was the one? Yeah, I'm not going to take Steve Miller Band's The Joker and use it to undergird, was it Holy, Holy, Holy or Mighty Force? I remember it was on my vicar's congregation. Like they're doing it, boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And like it's going underneath Holy, Holy, Holy. And I'm just like, stop. The Hank Hill, right? You're making rock and roll worse. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that at all. I don't want you to know what it comes from. I want to learn about the third, the fourth, the minor lift, the major fifth to give the whatever, however that is. The minor fifth, the major chord to give the lift. I just want to take that much of something and then drop it into a psalm tone, so that part of the song that everyone goes ooh on, like that's the part you're singing, but you don't have the association with the other thing, which is why I don't want to tell you where I'm getting the psalm tones from, because they're not places that they're not places I want associated with church. But they got good tunes. They got good psalm tunes. Oh, the Latin. Oh, it's so good. So, and I don't have it in front of me. I can like try to search on my computer. But that, that makes for some boring content. Let me think about it. Where would that be right now? Would it be in my file system on this computer, or is it only somewhere else? It could be in Dropbox, but I don't think so. I think this is still in. I don't know. I haven't found everything yet that was stored in different places, and some of it's just lost. Oh, I know what I could do. Oh, this will work. I can find it this way. Hold on. Oh, nope. I need a different app than this. Go to the email app and try to ignore everything that's there. Don't get distracted. Face forward. Alrighty then. Here. Will that do it? Nope. That was this one. Oh, this one perhaps. Let's see here. All right. So and now that I've made this case, I'm terrified I'm gonna do a bad job of this. We want Psalm 1, and we want, come on, go there, and then we want Command Tab. We want this tone by Psalm 1. I think that's close. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners. Oh, that's the wrong one though. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. On his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water. It yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all he does he prospers. The wicked are not so. They are chaff that the wind drives away. The wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. So, don't tell me that's not a song. Ignore my voice. It's not terrible. It's not great. I can carry a tune. Did that feel like chanting? Is that what we call chant? I don't think it is. I think it's something different. I think it's called singing. It's just singing a very simple song that is intentively tried to mimic what we as American music listeners hear. Didn't it make you want to sing the song? Because it should. It should. Anyway, you're talking about other stuff, so my heart's on the line. Oh, I lost 10 viewers during that. It's great. Oh, okay. So that was the answer to that. Go into comments for a few moments before we go ahead and say goodbye, because I've got to go do some work over at the church here. Yeah, you're going to figure out what you will never figure out what I pulled that from unless I give it to you, because the songs are too long. And so I'm not pulling from the whole song. I'm pulling from the moments in the song that are the ooh moments. And it's like 3 notes, because it all is 3 notes, 4 notes. I'm pulling just that. And then I'm shifting other places. I'm pulling from other places too, but I'm shifting it into one song on its own. It's a total hack. It's a musical hack. I'm no musician. I got a decent ear, but no musician. Oh, wow. I love this, though. This is great, Sarah. Yeah. This is not about flatter, right? This is about getting in the ear of a kid. My son used those tones to ask me for a snack the other day and was humming it in his room. It's like such a win. If it gets in the ear of our kids, oh, it's so huge. Pulling from secular sources, trying to guess, you're not gonna get that one. And I don't want to tell you because you'd be like, oh, there's only one. There's only one I've told anybody about. I told my daughters, and I told my one of my two apprentice vicar guys, young guys that were just training up a little bit here. They help with liturgy, and I told them one of them because you can hear the one line, and it's a song you don't mind having associated at that moment. You're kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool, but you don't want it. You don't want the association. You just want the music, right? And so it doesn't do us any good if we start talking about what they are. Nothing wrong with writing new psalm totes and chants for liturgy. The purpose of chant has always been to deliver the text. Amen. That is the argument I am making. Pentatonics, yeah, they're kind of not cool. My dad likes them. I don't really like them. Nick Cave has a cool hallelujah, but people always expect it's going to be Cohen's. Okay. This argument here, hymns take tunes from secular sources all the time. Plenty of examples in LSB. Nothing wrong with it. I'm told that's a myth. So unless you're a liturgist, hymnist, specialist with historical things. I mean, the idea that Luther did is just a myth. Now, I think you might be right in this, that sometimes they do take classical songs, well-known tunes of other cultures, and they'll appropriate them, but they don't take like the pop, right? And that's the way this argument is used. It's like, well, the hymns used to take from other, secular stuff, so we should sing the Joker in church and just change the words. That's just a different place. You're really in a different place. You just want your rock and roll. And I know. I have my rock and roll and I like it. Every day. But it shouldn't be in the sanctuary. Did you get it? I don't know if I did it right. The Easter egg there. But if you got it, you should get it. If you don't know that, you don't know history. Let's see. Yeah. What else do we got here? I'm just throwing stuff in. Musical lead have dissuaded too many people from even attempting to learn to sing. That's the truth. I don't know how to talk about that. I've seen it happen too many times. It's like either you're going to sing professionally or you shouldn't sing. Well, then you're going to have a non-singing congregation. I'm told I like chant and other intellectual stuff because I'm one of those musical elites. We trained musicians haven't done ourselves any favors. Yeah, because, sometimes when you're a cook, you can taste things other people can't taste. And so you can cook something that's super, super special. I'll put this a different way. I remember being at a gathering with some Philadelphia area pastors for a conference. And somebody had brought a bottle of like really good scotch. Like this was like I shouldn't say really good. It was like a $60 bottle, $70 bottle instead of like a $35, $40 bottle. And he brought, cups, and he was giving everybody a little bit. We're sitting there, we're sipping the scotch, and along comes this guy named Dave. Dave's quite the dude. Hey Dave, you want any scotch? Yeah, sure. He pours him a good bit of scotch. Give him and he shoots the scotch. It's like, dude, we'll get you a cheap vodka if you want to do that, right? Don't do that. So there is something that when you've learned to appreciate a thing, only you can appreciate it. Other people, it's not even worth it for them, right? But then that is never going to be the communal reality. Not everyone's going to be an expert. Otherwise there's no such thing as an expert. Do we want to raise the bar? Do we want to educate? Absolutely. Yeah, we want people who can read music in the church. You want to be able to not just hear the tone, but read the tone. However, it's more important that you hear the tone than read the tone. Because people sang a long time without written music. And now we got a lot of written music and people aren't singing. So, what do we do? Am I helping my hubby adjust to the music if I tell him you base it on Pink Floyd? I have not done any Pink Floyd songs yet. That's an interesting thought. What would be, I have become comfortably numb. That doesn't really work. Hello, hello, hello. Goodbye Blue Sky, Mother. That moment in Mother, the guitar solo, ooh, so good. Rest of the song's not that great, but that solo, you listen to the whole song just for that solo. Oh, so good. I don't know. I don't know that they have anything. I mean, Pink Floyd's genius is not the one moment of pop sound. In fact, they never really had pop hits. Money was popular because of the cash register. They used a musical cash register, and so it got played. I mean, this is like you do a song at Christmas about Christmas, and it gets on the radio because it's about Christmas. And Money is definitely not their best piece by a million miles. And it's part of. I mean, you can make the argument that Dark Side of the Moon is their best piece. Although I would counter Final Cut. And if you don't like Final Cut, you don't know Pink Floyd. And you can say you do, but sorry. There's my elitist fandom on that one. And yeah, Final Cut ruined the band. It broke the band up. Roger Waters, he's a jerk. But what a masterpiece. But it doesn't have a single... Yeah, it doesn't have a single song that's radio playable on Final Cut. Because that's not what Pink Floyd is. They're not radio playable. And actually, to be a Pink Floyd fan... and say you don't like the liturgy is kind of ignorant because, sorry, I like your husband a lot. But like what the liturgy is doing for an hour is what Pink Floyd does with Dark Side of the Moon. That is actually like a 1-to-1 comparison here, right? It is a concept hour. Oh, I should talk about it that way. The liturgy is a concept album. Wow. I like that insight. That's really cool. The liturgy is a concept album. The Divine Service. The Divine Service is a concept album. What a thought. But for tones, I wouldn't go Pink Floyd. From that era, who would you have to do? I don't know. I try to think of Led Zeppelin. It's like, no, not really. It doesn't quite work. Rolling Stones probably has something you could borrow. Da 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 da. Let's see here. Where's my Bible again? Did I close it? I did. Come on, Jonathan. You know the first verse of Psalm 1, and I can't think of it right now. I just did that wrong. Bible is right here. Open that. Oh, I gotta do this all over again. Return. It's hot in my closet. Blessed is the man. So you got, I can't get no satisfaction, right? I can't get no, it's 5. You need to go to 4. So I can't get no, where'd you go? I can't get, Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. So I can't get no satisfaction. Right, so you don't hear it, right? You can't even hear it. I can't get no hope because rhythm has so much to do with it. Sad it. Gotta go higher. I can't get no satisfaction. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners. That is, I can't get no satisfaction chanted. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but like, it sounded all right, didn't it? Because it's a tune. It's a good tune. And I don't think you'd ever pick up on that unless I told you. Yeah. What about Animals? Oh, we're back on Pink Floyd. I feel like it's a real low point for them. And I'm willing to attribute this to my own ignorance. But it just doesn't... So each of those pieces is doing its own thing. And I see the intellectual spirit of it. I get the Animal Farm. All that's going on, right? Sorry if you're not a Pink Floyd fan. Roger Waters is big on reading books and writing concept albums on the basis of them, and some amazing work came out of that, musically speaking. Especially when he was working with a guitarist like Gilmour, a soloist. I mean, Gilmour can wail. So Animals is in that vein, and you don't ever get to Final Cut without Animals. But the thing about it is that unlike Dark Side and unlike Final Cut, Animals is just a bunch of songs that are concepts in a concept album. But there is not a thread of tie musically between them. And really, if you were going to do Animal Farm, instead of just having a song about pigs, you needed the song in which, you needed pigs to be the music, and then you have dogs, and then somehow pigs and dogs are doing the same thing. Like their tunes are coming back. I don't know I didn't study music, but I know they do this. Peter and the Wolf, you got these themes, and they come back, and it's like telling you who's doing what when, right? So all great musicians have done that. So, nothing like that really that I can see at least is going on in Animals. It's just like we're going to write a song about pigs, about dogs, and we're going to tell you at the beginning and at the end, this is about Animal Farm. Whereas Dark Side, it's like one song. That album is one song. The last four don't even have breaks, right? Like it's my old CD player in my car. Like it would stop it to go to the next track, and it's like, don't do that. Just run through. I couldn't, there's no way to do it with the CD players. It was, that's marvelous. But then that has Syd Barrett, right? The genius there is Syd Barrett, who goes crazy. And so I think Waters, I'm just guessing here, but Waters spends a lot of time trying to get back to Dark Side, trying to bring it back. And The Wall kind of does it in a way, but The Wall is so much of a concept album that it's almost more like a musical, and it'd be an interesting movie and all this stuff. And then Animals, it's like he's experimenting. It's stuff I do, right? You say, well, throw it at a wall, see if it sticks. And it's good. It's fine. It's okay. But then he hits a stride with Final Cut. Really does. And Gilmore's still there. So the guitar's being used just right. The storytelling, something. Wish You Were Here is similar to Animals. There's some really great stuff. Definitely a good song. Probably, again, one of their most playable songs. With some tea making at the beginning. Yeah. How old is this guy, Fisk? How does he know all this about Pink Floyd? That was, Pink Floyd was my love, man, in high school. I played, okay, you want to talk about weird hybrid. Chrono Trigger, anybody? Chrono Trigger. I never played Chrono Cross. I know the tunes because the album's amazing, but Chrono Trigger, Super Nintendo. I rented it from Blockbuster Video. Back when you could rent a cartridge. Maybe you still can, I don't know. Renting cartridges from Blockbuster for way too much money for 3 days. So I have 3 days. I think I rented it twice. 3 days, 6 days to play Chrono Trigger. It's a good game. Like for that era, like if you played games in that era, RPG at all, Chrono Trigger, you know it. But like and I know some of the music from it. I didn't do this entirely, but I did. For like 3 of those 6 days, I had The Wall on loop. Senior in high school, 6 days holed up in a closet whenever he can, not closet, in his room whenever he can, with The Wall on loop, playing Chrono Trigger. Endlessly. The ways we waste our lives. Oh man, what about Animals? Good question. Put XYZ on organ. I don't know. Is XYZ a band? Now you got me. I'm ignorant there. I don't know. You cannot rent anything from Blockbuster? Did they close? They did. What's the one? There's Family Videos still around selling CBD. What on earth? Anyway, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. It has been a blast. I'm glad you were here. I'm glad I was here. I hope all of it held together. We hit our high water mark. I have never seen us reach 70 people. We're down to 59 now, but I've never seen us have 70 at once. So, whoa, look at that. That's great. Remember, we're working on some cool stuff. If you have not subscribed to the newsletter yet, the reboot, which is going to be largely the same. We're just trying to get more control and keep it consistent. That should be, if the Lord blesses us, Monday. So if you want that, you need to sign up before then, and don't sign up to MailChimp. Go to redfist.com and go to the Mad Mondays and sign up there. Do not sign up to the MailChimp link. It should not be in the thing below. I'll double check to make sure it's not there. I don't know how people are still finding it. I've tried to purge that from everywhere. Every time you sign up on a MailChimp, I have to go and single-handedly move your address into MailerLite. MailerLite's, I like it a lot better than MailChimp, by the way. So that stuff's coming. Be excited for that. Patreon, if you are willing and haven't, out of last week, I saw a lot of growth in Patreons. I really appreciate that and would love to see that continue as well. Pre-order Without Flesh. You can do it at cph.org. And if you put RevFisk in as your coupon code, you will get 20% off of my previous book, Echo, which frankly did not sell as well as it should because it's the best thing I've ever done. It's a better book than Without Flesh. Without Flesh is good. It's valuable. It's necessary. But Echo will do for you. Oh, man. Well, what the catechism's supposed to do. Now, so I don't want to replace the catechism. Don't get me wrong. I wanted to open the catechism for you. So check that stuff out. Is there any other announcements? I need my shadow broker to start giving me like more of you have to say these things. Shadow broker, print me a list. Print me a list of what I must say. I will tape it right there, and then I will always try to say it. Always. Shadow broker, love it. We will catch y'all very soon. Don't wallow in the muck. Rock on.